Okay, I'm going to start. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 4th meeting of the Jersey City Zoning Board of Adjustment. This meeting is held in accordance with NJSA 10:4-12, the Open Public Meetings Act. I would like to call this meeting to order. Excuse me?
June 5th.
I'm sorry, it's June 5th. I'm still yesterday, okay. Okay, Mr. Beasley, are there any sunshine announcements that you would like to share with us?
In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, notice has been provided to Bergen Record, Ellis Bolito, as well as posted with the city clerk. I'd like to request to mark this as B1. Vinny?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. Okay, will you please take roll call, Mr. Beasley?
Yes. I see Commissioner Barron,
Here.
Commissioner Shadid,
Yes.
Commissioner Patel,
Here.
Acting Vice Chair Allen,
Here.
and Chair Coyle.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Can we all please stand for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any staff, Bridget, we need to swear in staff members?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony or comments you will give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay. Okay, Mr. Beasley, is there any correspondence and any adjournments?
Yes. So just want to kind of reiterate that the item that's under the adjournments list is Z 2024-0038 through 11 Ocean Avenue. That one's going to be carried to July 10th. And items 10 and 11 under new business, Z 2025-0002 and Z 2025-004, 130 Summit Avenue, will be carried to July 10th as well.
Okay, thank you. So our first case for this evening is Z 2025-0025. It's a one-year extension.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Michael Higgins, Castano Quigley Cherami, on behalf of the applicant here. This is an extension of approvals obtained originally under case number Z19-041. The applicant just needs a one-year extension. They've been coordinating with the building department to pull permits, and they need to work it out with their elevator manufacturer to get an elevator that meets the height allowances in the ordinance in the previous approval.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have any questions on this one-year extension? Mr. Beasley, do you have anything? I see you're the person, as the planner. You're okay with that?
Staff just asked that the applicant agrees to the conditions under the original approval.
That's fine.
Staff recommends approval.
Okay. Can we take a vote, please?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve case Z2025-0025 as presented to the board this evening.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Beasley, now can you take a vote?
Commissioner Barron,
Yes.
Commissioner Shadid,
Yes.
Commissioner Patel,
Yes.
Acting Vice Chair Allen,
Yes.
and Chair Coyle.
Yes.
Motion carries, 5 in favor, none opposed.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, before we call our next case, I would just like to say that any public comments, if there are anyone from the public who will be commenting, you will be limited to 3 minutes. Mr. Shadid will be holding you to those 3 minutes, and he will let you know when you have 1 minute left. And if we are going on past 10 o'clock, we will end that meeting, and we'll have to adjourn and bring you all back for the next meeting. So with any further ado, do we have case Z2025-0020, 128 Glenwood Avenue. Mr. Wine?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Benjamin Wine of Prime Tuvel and Misselli on behalf of the applicant. I know this is a little bit unorthodox, but can I approach real quick? I have a procedural question for Mr. LaPaglia.
I totally forgot about that. I have to be reminded every time I come.
What's the time?
Thank God that you said I vote too.
Oh.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. We'll see you shortly.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to reconvene the zoning board meeting of June 5th, 2025. At this time, we will hear case Z2025-0020, 128 Glenwood Avenue. Again, if there are any members of the public that are going to make comments, you will be held to 3 minutes. And Mr. Shadid will be making certain that you are on time. He'll remind you have 1 minute left. And if we go past 10 o'clock, we will have to come back. So let's bring in.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Benjamin Wine of Prime Tuvel and Misselli on behalf of the applicant. The application before you this evening is for the property located at 128 Glenwood Avenue. That's block 13204, lot 58, and we are in the U zoning district. As you're very familiar with this site, given past applications, the property is currently vacant, was most recently utilized as a community garden under the auspices of St. Peter's University, which has subsequently sold the property to my client. This neighborhood, as you'll hear in detailed testimony shortly, does contain a number of other uses, including on this block front in particular, is a smattering of multifamily residential uses. Most recently, you heard 136 and 140 Glenwood a few months back. That's a few properties away that were the dorm buildings belonging to St. Peter's, which were converted into the residential units. Again, St. Peter's divested itself of those properties as well. And as is typical when an institutional use sells off their property, is especially when it's zoned for that institution, there are zoning board applications to change that use to something that's more appropriate. And that's what we're looking to do here this evening. When we were here last time for our application in 2023 and 2024, we had proposed an R3 development at the subject property based on the fact that the entire block that is not zoned U is zoned R3. And that proposal included a 4-story building with 4 units and compliance with the R3 zoning standards. And again, we obviously felt and put on our case that that was an appropriate use of this property. This board felt otherwise, that it was not. And there were some comments made at that time from the board, from members of the public, including from the councilman's aide's office, that they felt R1 is more appropriate. And so ultimately that application had been denied at the time, and we're here this evening seeking an R1 application. What that means practically is that while we do have variance relief, which is why we're before you, because we're obviously not compliant with the U zone, I will slow down. We are obviously not compliant with the U zone. If we were, we would be before the planning board. But the variance relief is in order to construct a development that is 100% compliant with R1, which is one of your more restrictive zones in Jersey City. And that includes a 3-story, 3-unit multifamily building in the front and an accessory dwelling unit in the rear. You will hear testimony as well that regardless of what residential zone we're in throughout the city, even the RH zones, which are the most restrictive standard residential zones in Jersey City, the 3 units that we came up with in the principal building would be compliant. That is a permitted, in any residential district, number of units in the principal building, along with the accessory dwelling unit. That is something that between last time and this time, Jersey City has adopted as something that they would like to see, would promote the goals of additional housing, additional style of housing, in putting these accessory dwelling units at the rear of the property. And that's what we're proposing here this evening. The variances that we have are for the D1 use, obviously. This is the university district. We're here for this variance. Since the university has divested itself, it is not practical to construct any university uses by a private citizen or private resident. And some of those examples include those dormitories which you saw from prior applications at 136 and 140 simply end up getting converted to residential because I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's impractical to have dormitory use where the university doesn't feel that the dormitory use is necessary. So that's a type of development. Sorority, fraternity, a garden or a park or a playground operated by the university are other permitted uses. Again, none of those are particularly practical, which you'll hear in detailed testimony when you have a property owned on an entirely residential block, 100% residential, not owned any longer by the university. The C variances that we have, so that was the D variance that puts this application properly before this board. The C variances that we have are for the buffer, the minimum buffer from the residential use. The university uses required a 10-foot buffer from any residential use. You'll note that actually on one side there is a residence, but it is zoned university. But because it's a residence, we would be required, if we were a university use, to provide that 10-foot buffer. And on the other side, which is the R3 zone, we obviously also are required, if we were a university use, to provide that 10-foot buffer. What we're doing instead is providing your standard 2 foot on one side, 3.5 feet on the other side setback that is, again, consistent with all of the residential zones, with the sole exception of the RH1 zone, which has a 40-foot lot width minimum, which is obviously not applicable here. But everywhere else, there's a requirement for that 2 foot, 3.5 foot, combined 5 foot setback on either side, and that's what we're compliant with. And the only other C variance we have is for the height of the accessory structure. This is a little bit of a unique one. But because we're proposing an accessory dwelling unit, we are conforming with the accessory dwelling unit height requirement of 18 feet. But because this is a university zone and the accessory dwelling unit is permitted in the residential zones, not the university zone, there's no mention of accessory dwelling unit, but there is an accessory structure height limitation of 15 feet. Again, the 18 feet is entirely consistent with the R1 standards. And I stress this, and I know I've said it a few times, and I'm not trying to belabor the point. I know that the board and the public are intelligent and understand what I'm saying, but I think that it's worth noting that we have worked extremely closely with city planning in coming up with this R1 design. You know, Ms. Marion was pretty straightforward from the beginning when we gave it a shot with an R3 application, that an R1 is something that we could work on together and come up with, and that's, again, what we have here this evening. So we took our proverbial licks with the last application, and the application we're presenting to you this evening is in line with what we have discussed, what we've come up with, and quite frankly, the comments that we received from the public at the last meeting. I'd like to introduce to you tonight 2 witnesses. You'll note that our architect is new. We went ahead and the client elected to hire a different architect to present the R1 design, not because we felt that there was any issue with our prior architect. I thought he did a bang-up job in testimony and design, but frankly, when the goal was to start fresh with an R1 design, My client ultimately felt that you need a new set of eyes to really, really, truly start fresh with the application, and brought on a different architect, Avar Patel, who I know is familiar to this board, has presented here before, and he'll walk the board through the architecture and the overall site plan that we're proposing. The only other expert I intend to call this evening is our project planner, Charles Height, who I also know is very familiar to this board and has been here. He's going to do a much better job than I have in explaining the rationale for why we've come up with the R1 design and how we ultimately comply. But I think that it's, again, in my opening, it's worth noting because I'd like to frame it to the board to understand why we came up with this, and that this was not just take a random application, take a random design, try to fit it onto the property. As you'll hear, when you look at zoning, it's not about spot zoning. It's not about, well, what maybe we can come up with here for this particular lot. It's about looking at the different zoning standards that are prevalent throughout the city and saying, yes, we recognize there's a use variance requirement. Let's pick the set of zoning standards that make sense or better sense than the university zone standards that are currently in force on this one property. And with that, Chair, Madam Chair, and Commissioners, unless you have any questions of me, I'm happy to proceed with my first witness.
Mr. Wine, let me just put on the record that you have your notices and you've submitted them to us for review. We have reviewed them, we have approved them as rigid. I think they're on your desk to be marked as A1.
They will be marked A1 in evidence for this application.
Thank you. All right, so with that, I'll call up Avar Patel. Coming up on the screen. All right, Avar, before you get started, I suspect Bridget is going to get you sworn in.
Would you raise your right hand and be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state and spell your full name for the record.
Avart Patel, A-A-V-A-R-T, P-A-T-E-L. Thank you.
So, Avar, before I ask you to start presenting the application, I would like to get you qualified in your field. So if you can please give the board the benefit of your educational and professional background and the status of your license in the state of New Jersey.
Sure. Hi, I have a bachelor's and master's degree in field of architecture from University of Buffalo. And I've been practicing as an architect for past 8 years. And I've been involved in field of architecture since 2004. And I've been involved in numerous applications like this and the design similar to this which we are proposing today.
And Avar, your license is in good standing this evening?
That is correct.
So, Madam Chair, I'd submit Mr. Patel as an expert in the field of architecture.
Okay, proceed.
Thank you.
So, Avar, if you could start by walking the board through the existing conditions of the site and what we're proposing, as well as your zoning table. I alluded to the relief, but again, you can walk the board through as you present the application.
Sure. The site is located at 128 Glenwood, and currently the site is a vacant lot. The property on the right side, which is located in R3 zone, which is a three-story structure, 3.5 stories technically. And the one on the left side is a single-family residence, which is located in a university zone. There is the Glenwood Avenue. It has a slope, going downwards from right to left. And I have an exhibit which would show the elevation of the street and the slope towards the end of the presentation, but we'll cover that as part of that slide. There is a slight elevation from the sidewalk to the existing vacant lot. And I'm going to move to the proposed site plan, which shows the footprint of the building, setback along the front front of the property, and then the ADU, which is located towards the back. For the principal building, we are aligning the structure with the left side residence, which is a single-family residence. And the front yard setback comes out to be plus minus about 27 feet. There is a 4 foot wide, 4.5 foot wide walkway leading to the front steps, and then the remaining area is green grass. The 3'6" setback, which is little more than normal setback you see in a 3'4" setback, which is slightly more than what you typically see in an R1 district, which is on the right side of the property, or right side of the building when you're facing the building, and then a 2 foot setback is along the left side. And then the ADU would have a 3 foot setback on one side and then 2 foot around. Typically, the ADUs are required to have a 2 foot setback all the way around. We are providing a little more setback on the left side just to create a little more separation. I'm going to go quickly to the site and the utility plan. All the utilities proposed are going to run within that 3'4" setback. It would be underground, and they will come out and tie into the mains located at the Glenwood Avenue. I'm going to move to the building floor plans now. The first plan at the bottom of the page is the first floor plan. As you can see, the front step, which were visible in the site plan, there are 5 risers. You come to a porch, and then that's where the entry to the upstairs, the other units are. And then for the unit number 1, there's a door directly next to that staircase, and that would give access to unit number 1. This unit is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath unit, about 1,260 square feet. Living and kitchen towards the front of the building, and then the 3 bedrooms are located towards the back, with the master having a patio door leading to the backyard. That has a master has an attached bath and a walk-in closet. There's a hall bath, and then the utilities are located along the 2 foot setback line. The electric and gas meters would be located towards the right side, where we have a wider setback, 3'4". So that's what this recess area indicates, the location for the utilities. Going to the second floor plan, the main staircase would bring to this level. That's where there are 2 doors, one leading to unit number 2, and then another one leading to unit number 3, which is located towards the back. So the 2 units on this level are duplex, and the unit number 2 has the living, kitchen, and a small powder room at this level. So once, and then there is a second staircase or stack staircase, which would lead to the upper level, which I'll go over the next slide. And then unit number 3 has the bedrooms located at this level, and then the staircase leading to the upper level, where the kitchen and the living area would be. This arrangement makes all the living and kitchen areas are towards the front of the building, and then the bedrooms are towards the back. Again, similar layout. Unit number 3 is at this level, it's about 800 square feet, and then the remaining is on the second level, and unit number 2, which is about 500 square feet at this level, and then the rest would be on the upper level. Going to the third floor plan, as you can see, that staircase from unit number 3 was coming up, and then there's the the kitchen, a powder room, and a living towards the front. And then the second staircase you see along at the bottom of the screen, which is part of the unit number 2, which would come up, and then the bedrooms are located towards the back. Overall, the square footage comes out to be about 1,324-25 for unit number 2, and 1,375 for unit number 3. And then both units will have access to the roof deck, which you could see on the roof plan. So the staircase is basically switched back. So now the unit 2 would take this staircase to go to the roof, and then unit 3 will take the staircase along the bottom of the page to go to the roof. The roof deck, we are proposing a green roof towards the back of the building, which is about 330 square feet. On the front side, we have a slope roof, which is part of the building facade and the exterior or the main facade. There is a required 10-foot, more than, I mean, the proposed setback is about 11'3", and it's required to have 10-foot setback for R1 district to have the occupied roof.
Is required to have a 10-foot setback, what?
For R1 zone regulation for residential use with the amenity deck. The condensers or the mechanical equipment for each unit would be located as part of their occupied roof, and that would be screened in. I'm going to quickly jump to the floor plan for the ADU. This is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, or actually 1.5 bath unit, and totaling about 914 square feet. The front entrance is towards the back of the principal building. The condenser would be located towards the front, and then the living and the kitchen area would be on this level, stairs leading to the second level, where the 2 bedrooms and a hall bath is located. I'm going to jump to the front elevation now. As you can see, we are trying to kind of blend in with a style similar to the residences you see on the along this street, and we have used some of those characters to enhance the front facade. But fairly straightforward. You have the entry porch with a cover here, half hexagonal bay with a hexagonal bay, half of hexagonal bay with a pitch roof, and fairly straightforward. Hardy type of material along the box bay, and then the horizontal siding. 4 or 6 inch horizontal siding, and then the first floor will have a masonry material, reddish brown brick, which is fairly consistent with the materials seen along the street, and R1 development in R1 type of zone development. This elevation is for the ADU. Again, similar materials with a brick on the first floor, and then the horizontal siding would be on the second floor. These are the material swatches. As I said, the brick would be reddish brown, and the hardy color would be beige. Beige, and then the lap siding we are using mountain sage, which is on a olive green or darker green color. And then the front of this covered porch, we are proposing a small shed roof, which would have a standing seam siding, and then the main roof would be shingle type siding. Going to quickly go through the rear elevation, fairly straightforward, 3 levels. We have 3 small balconies with a patio door, and then these windows open into the attached bath. This is the elevation looking at a 3'4" setback side. All the windows are located on that side, and again, this would be a horizontal siding along this facade. This facade is along the 2-foot setback. We're not allowed to have any windows. This is so there are no windows on this side, and it would be with a similar material, horizontal siding. And then the ADU, all 3 elevations, the remaining 3 elevations, the 2 sides and the back would be horizontal siding, and there are no windows on those facades. I'm going to quickly go to the exhibit we prepared that is showing the elevation of the street.
And Albert, since this was not previously submitted, we should have this identified as A2 in the record.
Actually, I have it as A10. Is that
Okay, we'll call it A2 is sheet A10.
Okay.
And if you can just describe what this exhibit is.
All right. So this iteration indicates the elevation of the houses along the street, starting from the one on the left side, which is a single-family residence, the site we are presenting today, and then so on and so forth. All the 4 houses you see on the right side of this proposed structure would be in an R3 zone. There is a taller, larger building, and actually all 4 are 3 stories or 3.5 stories if you count it from the sidewalk. And as you can see, the sidewalk has a decent slope as well. And this just shows the elevations you see along the building, and given that the site is sloping from one side to the other, this building blends in. It's not going to be, the height-wise and overall elevation treatment-wise, we're trying to blend in with the block as the street slopes down.
And Albert, just while you're on this exhibit, is it fair to say that there's, while there are common themes associated with the various houses or residences along the block, there's not one identical shape? So your version, what you sought to do was to fit in your building into this general row of other buildings.
That is correct.
Okay.
I think that concludes my presentation.
So just a couple of quick follow-ups. With respect to the lighting, I know you didn't go over it, but could you confirm for the record that any lighting that is proposed on this building would be dark sky compliant and would not have any spillover to any of the adjacent residences?
Yes, it would be compliant. There won't be any spill-off.
Okay. And then in terms of the review letters, so we received a review letter from Ms. Marion, we received a review letter from the MUA. You take no exception to complying with the conditions and the comments therein, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. We'll comply.
Okay, and then lastly, just before we turn it over to the planner, if you can go back to the zoning table, I just want to ask you if you can contextualize. Obviously, we are in the use zone, and obviously we do have a D1 use variance. And when you have a use variance, we have to look to mitigate the impacts of the use that we're proposing. So if you can just identify for the board what the use zone height, coverage, setback requirements are, and whether we are compliant or less than.
Sure. So as you can see on the table, the first column is the requirements for the U zone. As Ben have mentioned, the permitted uses are universities, park, playground, part of the university use, dormitories, fraternity houses, sorority houses, and meeting halls. The side yard requirement for the accessory structure is 2 feet. All the other requirements are not applicable because there are none for minimum lot area, lot width, lot depth. Side yard accessory structure, as I said, it's 2 feet, and we are complying. Rear yard for principal building, again, there is none. And then the buffer zone, which is required on if the adjacent property is a residential use, which is 10 feet. Density, there is none. Height for the principal structure or principal building is 40 feet, 4 stories. The green roof, there is no requirement, and the lot coverage is 80%. Building coverage for the principal building is 60%, and there is no coverage requirement for the accessory structure.
So, Avard, is it fair to say that other than the buffer, which is unique to if we were proposing a university use, every single metric related to our proposal is either compliant or over compliant with the U zone and the R1 zone, which we're seeking to develop in accordance with?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further for this witness.
We'll hold the questions. I just have one question. Do you happen to have a photo of the neighborhood as it is now? I mean, you showed me a black and white photo of the houses in a row, including this new structure in sort of like a drawing of some sort. But is there an actual photo of the neighborhood right now as it looks?
I don't have it with me now.
I don't have one.
Okay. We'll hold other questions till the end.
Sure.
Thank you.
So with that, I'll call my next witness and my intended final witness, Charles Height, our professional planner.
Do you want to take it?
No, I don't need this on here.
Okay.
This here,
Let me just
Thank
quickly plug it in.
okay. Sworn
You know what to do.
in. Okay.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, yes.
Thank you, and state and spell your full name for the record.
Hi, good evening. Charles Height, last name is spelled Heydt. Okay.
And Charles, similar to what Mr. Patel just did, if you can please give the board the benefit of your educational and professional background and the status of your license in the state of New Jersey.
Okay, thank you. Yes, good evening, board members. Happy to be back here again. I do have a master's in city and regional planning from Rutgers University. I've been practicing as a planner in the state of New Jersey as a professional planner for about the past 15 years. We regularly, as part of the Dresner Robin company, do work in Jersey City. So for the better part of the past 8 years, I've been working concentrated with a lot of our private site plan applications in Jersey City and Hudson County. And I'm familiar with the zoning ordinance here in the city. So I think that's
And Charles, your license is current here this evening?
licensed in the state as a professional planner and is still current and good standing.
Thank you. So Charles, I'm going to really turn it over to you, but you've heard the proposed site plan as well as the relief that we're seeking. So if you could please walk the board through your testimony.
Okay, so just for the benefit of the board to reiterate, we are referencing from a formal standpoint the U district standards, the university district standards. So there are 3 variances that we need. I will be referencing, as we have referenced, other zones, but that's really just to hopefully give the board some bearing on what we think is an appropriate proposal or application to this board. First and foremost, we need a use variance. The university district does not permit residential uses. So what we are proposing is residential use, and it doesn't permit basic residential uses. The other 2 are bulk variances. 1, minimum buffer from a residential use. It's kind of counterintuitive. We have a residential use that we're proposing, but yet we still need a buffer. Out of an abundance of caution, we're referencing that as an additional use. An additional bulk variance. And then lastly, the third is actually a variance for the accessory dwelling. So what the U district permits as an accessory dwelling, height permitted is 15 feet. What we're proposing is 18 feet, so 3 feet north of that accessory height building permission. So that's the relief needed. Now, from a justification standpoint, what I'll walk through is the arguments that we're presenting to this board to justify the use variance, and that's usually the main focus. Tonight, really what I have is really a practical, almost abbreviated set of arguments, because really it's the consistency of what this proposal brings to the neighborhood. So first and foremost, the particular suitability argument is about finding attributes of the property in terms of topography, shape, size, or context in terms of where it's located in the city, in the neighborhood, that would lend itself to be particularly suitable for a different use that's not permitted in the zone. So just to remind the board, in terms of the university district, the principal uses that are permitted are colleges and universities, parks and playgrounds, dormitories, fraternity and sorority houses, meeting halls. Those are all civic-oriented, university-oriented uses, and obviously residential is not permitted. So with respect to the property from a physical standpoint, it's about 3,581 square feet. It's a sufficient size to locate a development of a residential application, residential use. The other standards, traditionally the R1 that we look to for residential housing, starts at a minimum of 2,500 square feet. So just for a gauge and a comparison, 3,581 square feet is roughly 1,000 square feet larger, which means that there's, in my opinion, ample size for this proposed use. With respect to the location, we are on what I would say is the fringe of a few districts. The cursor. If we could zoom into the zoning map first, just for proximity. Thank you very much, Art. On the left, so on the left on the zoning map image. There you go. We're on the fringe of what I would say is 3 zones. We're in the university zone. We're the last property in the university zone. We're adjacent immediately to the R3. And across the street to the north is the R1. So, when you're on the fringe of zones, sometimes you have uses that might bleed over from one zone to the next. It's not a perfect science when you're zoning. But in this instance, I would say that's very much the case, where we have a mix of uses within the edges of the zone. And if we move over to the aerial, and I think one of the earlier exhibits that I'll get into is the adjacent uses in the exhibit that was shown. But we do have a residential use immediately to the west of the subject property, and we have 3 or what would be 4 residential uses immediately to the east. Beyond that, on the left and right, on the east and west, we have 2 multifamily buildings. So again, everything I just mentioned is all residential. So from a context standpoint, what's being proposed is consistent in terms of use. It's an appropriate square footage, as I mentioned earlier. I'll go one step further to say that the proposed density is also particularly suitable. The 3,581 square feet equates to an acreage of 0.082. Using the R1 standard, that's the predominant residential housing zone in the city. The city did update the R1 zoning to allow for multifamily 3 units, but had a density limit of 42 units per acre. So again, it's not a requirement here. We're not requesting a density variance. But in our approach with this application, we use the R1 zoning standards as a barometer, a comparison to give us an idea if we are on par for the balance of the site, for balancing the site, and that 42 units per acre would permit 4 units on this property. Okay, so you take that acreage, you multiply it by 42 units, you get 3.5, round up as per the zoning ordinance, it would permit 4. And that is what's being proposed. So again, I think from both the lot size on a minimum standard and also a density standard, what's being proposed is an appropriate use, and it is particularly suitable for this property. We made it clear in our statement of principal points, and I just want to reiterate, I do not think a university or college would be appropriate for this property. It's way too small. 3,580 square feet wouldn't fit an appropriate classroom or whatnot, in my opinion, on this property.
And Charles, you would also need a 10-foot buffer on either side for this. So you'd have a 5-foot wide building. Is that?
5-foot wide building, yes. So I think that's clear. When you walk down this list, you could certainly put a park here. That's not this application. And anyone who would like to acquire the property or propose a park, they would have to go through market means to do that. What's the application before you today is for a residential use. So obviously, that's what we're discussing. The third permitted use, dormitories, fraternities, and sorority houses, are essentially a unique type of housing. It's a more specialized housing, so dormitories are specifically for students of a university. And fraternity and sorority houses are the same, except you put up Greek letters in front over your doorway. They're not necessarily only geared for younger people. There are older people who might be in their mid-20s or even older than that might live in a dormitory or a sorority house. One thing the board should be aware of, and probably is aware of, is that the local universities have reduced their demand for dormitories. They've been selling properties, selling dormitories. And that's really just a product of where their student population is. They're no longer in the business of housing students, and really they're residential neighbors surrounding these universities, so there's available housing stock to support any students who are looking to occupy, to rent in a house near the schools. And that's essentially what we're doing is adding to that open market housing. Lastly, meeting halls. Any meeting hall would need a square footage to have rows of assembly, an appropriate size. I think the same logic with the buffer would render this property inappropriate for a meeting hall. So I think from a practical standpoint, from a building size standpoint, from a density standpoint, we meet that particular suitability test. Other special reasons that I did want to bring up with the board are with respect to the land use law. So I do think that what's being proposed to you in terms of a building mass, and I'll get into this in a little depth here, is to provide an adequate light, air, and open space. That's purpose C of the land use law. What we heard from Mr. Wine and Mr. Patel earlier are the fact that we've designed this proposed application to be very consistent with the R1 set of zoning standards to allow for an appropriate building form that has appropriate setbacks, building height. So when you do that, when you apply both the setbacks and the building height together as a set of standards, the city has established that that's an appropriate zoning envelope for a structure to be located in, and we've done that in this case. So both from a side yard setback and an overall building height setback, I do think we have special reasons to allow for the proposed residential use. With respect to purpose E, I provided some details on this already. I do believe that this is an establishment of appropriate population densities and concentrations that will contribute to the well-being of persons in neighborhoods and communities in the region and preserve the environment. That's the full clause. We're providing housing in an appropriate location. We're providing housing at an appropriate density, and I do think we're furthering that purpose of the land use law. And lastly, with respect to special reasons, I do think this application has gone through several iterations. We dealt with identifying the right amount of stories. We dealt with identifying the right facade details. We are presenting what we think is a very contextual design to the overall building with the pitched roofs, the details on the front facade. And ultimately, what I do think is that this is meeting purpose I, which is the promotion of a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design and arrangement. Just to pull up that exhibit again, this exhibit helps demonstrate a few different aspects, but just to reiterate, there's a mix of architectural elements on all of these buildings. They're not cookie cutter buildings. Every one of these buildings has somewhat of a unique mixture of peaked roofs, window locations, bays, projections, and ultimately what's being proposed has elements integrated into that. You can also see the spacing, the detached nature of the homes, so we're respecting that and that rhythm along this section. Also with the building height, we are proposing 3 stories, which would be permitted in the R3 and is permitted in the University District, but we are clearly smaller or shorter than what would be the largest structure is that multifamily to the east, which is a few doors down. So from a contextual standpoint, I do think what's being proposed fits in. There's the bulkhead for the rooftop. That's a common design element, and that is set back from the front facade. I'll just turn my focus with respect to the bulk variances. The minimum buffer from an adjacent setback is with respect to any adjacent residential uses, so it's a minimum of 10 feet. In my opinion, this requirement is really to regulate a larger structure, a university, a college, a dormitory, something that has a little bit more mass to it. That's what the University District is trying to regulate for. Given that we have a smaller property and we're proposing a different building type, this 10-foot setback is really, in my opinion, it equates to a hardship. We used a reference, it would render the property having the proposed building having a 5-foot width. So it's, in my opinion, tantamount to a hardship. The property is still sufficiently sized in terms of width for the proposed residential use, but not for the other uses permitted. So I do think while we don't comply, what the board should focus on is that we do comply with what would be appropriate standards in terms of the 2-foot setback and 5-foot total setback. With respect to the accessory dwelling unit in the rear, the University District does have a general standard for all accessory structures, 15 feet. We are proposing 8 feet.
18.
18, I'm sorry, 18 feet. I thought I said that. Permitted 15 feet. We are proposing 18 feet. The reason we're proposing 18 feet is because the city's policy for permitting accessory dwelling units permits 18 feet. It allows for a necessary floor-to-ceiling height for a 2-story accessory dwelling, and that is essentially what we're proposing to the board. Again, the reason we did that is to be consistent with the policy and zoning set for ADUs. I do believe that it's consistent and it's in the rear of the property where the ADU accessory structures are typically located, so I think that's appropriate. It's a 3-foot difference, and I don't believe there's any impact associated with it. Going to jump into the negative criteria, so no substantial impairment to the detriment to the general welfare, no substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the zone plan. One thing I did want to reference with the zone plan, we're dealing with the zoning ordinance, the zoning map. I did reference that we are on the edge of the University District. We're adjacent to R3 and R1. What we're proposing tonight is consistent with the R1 standards. For that reason, I don't think it's an impairment of the zoning ordinance. I actually think it's an appropriate application of it, and that is why we're requesting relief from the zone with which the property's in. We would comply with all of the requirements of the R1, the building height, setbacks, front yard, rear yard, the ADU, and the number of stories, and as I mentioned earlier, the density. With respect to the master plan, the creation of the university overlay zone would be allowing universities to grow and improve facilities within a defined area surrounding the existing campus without rendering existing residential or non-university uses non-conforming. So, in other words, this sort of policy set forth in the 2001 master plan recognizes that there are many other uses in the university district, but the idea of an overlay would allow for those uses to not be non-conforming, but allowed to be permitted and exist. The master plan also furthers the overlay idea that would include underlying bulk regulations so that any development is consistent with the surrounding built environment. So, in my opinion, given that we have adjacent residential uses, and what we're proposing is consistent with the R1 district standard, we're meeting that intent of the master plan policy. With respect to the general welfare, I've stated it a number of times. I do believe we're respecting the impacts to adjacent property owners by proposing what is a virtually compliant R1 standard residential application. We are proposing a new street tree and landscape in the front yard. We're proposing improvements to the overall property, given that it's vacant. We are proposing a design that's consistent with the neighborhood. And ultimately, I do think that while going from a vacant property to a dwelling has changes, it has impacts. In my opinion, it's not at the substantial detriment of the adjacent properties or the neighborhood. It's a proposed development of a property in Jersey City. With that, I think I've covered my direct notes. I know we did quite a bit of prep, so Mr. Wine, if you have any additional questions, be happy to answer, or the board as well.
Sure, just really a couple. I'm actually going to use the exhibit we see on the screen, and I think it's helpful, but you kind of see it to the right. Charles, if you could just confirm in your visit to the site, is it fair to say that beyond this block of even the 6 properties that we're showing, there is larger scale, the entire block is multifamily?
To the west here as well
correct.
is multifamily.
Including a 3-story and 4-story components up and down the block?
Correct, yes.
Okay, I also just want to confirm, and I put this in my opening, but I did not get my planning license, so I will ask you if it's fair to say that all of the residential zones throughout Jersey City, with perhaps the exception of some redevelopment plans here and there that we didn't necessarily study, would permit the density, and I know we're not seeking a density variance, but would permit the 4 units in some layout as we're proposing. Is that correct?
So we did do this review. And again, we're not trying to create policy. We're not trying to say this one particular property should be in a different zone. But the analysis to find an appropriate balance and approach to development on this site, we've done a thorough analysis on other zones. So in the RH1, in the RH2, in the R1, all would permit a 3-story unit with the accessory dwelling and allow for a density of at least 4 units with that 42 unit per acre standard.
Thank you. And then lastly, you alluded to it being a better planning alternative. And I think the crumbs are in there, but you spoke to some of the permitted uses in the zone that could be constructed, albeit with requiring to go to the planning board for a buffer variance. Would it be your opinion as a planner that the proposed use of this site is a better planning alternative than any of those other uses that you've identified that, again, would more than likely require some type of relief to be at a larger scale?
Yes, it's infill housing. It's creation of housing. It's a vacant property today. And notwithstanding the relief needed, I think it's extremely consistent with the adjacent residential dwellings that you see before you. So yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, that concludes my direct examination of Mr. Height.
Okay, thank you. Before we begin with comments from the public, we are going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back at 7:35. Order?
Oh, no, I was rushing. Yes, I got it.
So I bring Cynthia to come up and cross-examine.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, at this time, I would like to have Cynthia Hajian come to the podium and for cross-examination.
Okay, good evening, Commissioners. My name's Cynthia Hagianis. I'm here tonight on behalf of Nathan and Sharon McCormick, and they live at 130 Glenwood, immediately adjacent to the property that's the subject of the application you're hearing tonight. So, Mr. Patel, would you? I mean, we could, I guess, if you want to.
What was the question? Oh, yeah, whatever Cynthia wants.
Excuse me, just while they're, before we get to public, Cynthia, can you move the mic over? Why don't you move closer?
Oh,
Right, yeah.
Oh, pole, yeah. You can use the table.
Right,
Sorry to interrupt, but
that's okay.
better to have
no,
them closer together.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, how are you tonight, Mr.
Good.
Patel?
Thank you. How are you?
Okay, we heard about your plans, and I had some questions for you about your plans. So on sheet A1, and maybe you could pull that up for the board. We can proceed. It's okay.
Oh,
there we
there you
go. Okay. So there on the zoning comparison chart in the kind of to the left of the page, you have a column entitled "Permitted for R1 Zone," and I'm just wondering, why did you include that column on the zoning comparison chart?
The R1 zone standards, because we designed the building based on that standard.
Okay, and what? And who asked you to do it that way?
That was discussed with a client, with Ben, and based on the feedback which we received from, I guess, the last meeting, we decided to design the building on an R1 district standard, and that's why this table was added
Okay.
as a comparison.
Okay, and when you prepare these zoning charts, do you normally add a zone, a comparison of with a zone that's not where the property is located? Like, is this unusual that you included this column?
Correct, but as I said, it was designed based on the standard, so that's why, for comparison purpose, we had that.
Okay, and but you know the project is in the university zone.
That is correct.
Okay, and are you familiar with the university zone?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if we could just bring up the rendering that you showed, that was a new exhibit. Okay. The chairwoman Coyle had asked if there was a photo of the front of the block. And you replied that there is none. Why is that?
Oh, I said I don't have it right now. There is a photo. Of course, the street is there. But I don't have it handy with me right now.
Okay, isn't that a checklist requirement for the plans?
Not that the block front for the existing site and the existing building on the site, but not for the block front.
Okay. So on this rendering, is it to scale?
Yes, it is.
It is. Okay. And did you measure all of the buildings?
Yes, and then the dimensions are shown as well. So, I mean, of course, it's a plus minus, but it's not going to go up or down by a couple of feet or more. But that's what I'm saying. Like, it was based on the field survey of the adjacent structures, and then the dimension strings are there as well.
The dimension, what are there?
Dimension lines to the peak.
Lines?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So, and you're positive that this correctly reflects the relationship of all 6 buildings in the row to one another?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, I wanted to ask you some questions about the basic features of the project. How many total bedrooms are there?
Each unit is designed with 3 bedrooms, so total of 9 in the principal building and 2 in the ADU.
Okay, so it's 11 bedrooms altogether?
Correct.
And what's the total square footage of the project?
For the primary structure, it comes out to be 4,427 square feet, and then the ADU comes out to be about 1,040 square feet.
So it's 5,447 altogether?
67.
67. Okay,
Yep.
thanks. Okay. And then what's the distance between the accessory dwelling unit and the principal structure?
It's about 13'2".
Okay. And so do both of them have windows that would be facing one another?
Yes, they would be.
Okay. And how did you decide that was a sufficient distance between the principal structure and the accessory dwelling unit?
This is based on what the building code allows. When we have 2 structures on one side, there are certain calculations, and
So there are what
there are certain calculations you have to provide. When you have 2 buildings on one side, and then it needs to have a appropriate fire separation, and based on that, the distance apart, the opening percentage is allowed on each facade. So all that calculation goes in it, and that gets presented when this goes out to the building department.
And you
compliance.
feel that 13 feet gives everyone sufficient light, air, and open space?
Yes, it would be. That's what the zone allows.
Okay. And there's a roof deck on the project?
On the primary structure.
Okay. And why did you decide to include a roof deck?
It's a I guess required amenity at the moment. Since in general, most of the sites lack green space and even just an open space. So this provides another space for occupant to go out and have their privacy and enjoy outdoors.
Okay. Do the homes on either side of this property have roof decks?
No.
All right. And then when you, after you submitted your plans, you received review agent memos or comments?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Did you receive comments from all of the review agents?
Can you please explain which review agents
I
we're
guess
talking about?
forestry. Did you get any comments from forestry?
Cynthia, that may be a better question for me.
Okay. Well,
As the one
okay.
who has access.
Well, I'll wait till I finish to cross, but maybe we can. Okay. So, which memos did you receive?
We have gone through the planning memo and second. I guess.
Okay.
That's-
Are there other memos you would have expected to receive from review agents that you didn't receive?
So typically, like, let me get back to the forestry comment. Typically, when we design these sites, and we have done quite a few of them, most of the time the requirement for street trees and landscaping and all that is complied with. So usually we don't get a response back from them unless there is a technical issue in terms of the species of the tree or something similar, and then we would get a comment. But I'm not aware of any comment from forestry.
Okay, and I wanted to ask you, are you about the south? I think it's the south elevation that's immediately adjacent to my client's property.
The front.
Maybe southeast elevation.
Oh,
It's on
okay.
at the side.
Okay.
So I know I can see there are no windows, and I think you testified that that's because windows aren't allowed. Did you consider doing anything to break up this flat, monotonous expanse that my clients would be looking at?
So the building was placed this way with a reason, and let me just kind of go over that. As you can see, the building on the right side, which is in an R3 zone, has a setback of less than a foot. It's 0.9 feet. And then the building on the left side, which is 5'5", is the setback from the property line. So we felt that it would be appropriate to have a 3'4" setback where you have a less than a foot setback. So it provides a required separation, and then on the other side we have 2 feet plus 5'5", so that's 7'5". So we felt that having the 3'4" setback on the other side is more appropriate, and thus we put the windows there, so that way there is a balance. If you leave a 2 feet setback on that side, the structures would be too close, and then here we have on the left side we have more space, and we are providing more space. So that was the reason.
Right. My question, though, is more about the design of the windowless side, not about the fact that you decided to orient the windowless side toward my client's property, but more like, are there any design solutions that would make that more attractive or something people won't mind looking at?
I mean, yes, there are options, but again, we are trying to comply with urban district requirements, and most of the design you see are typically like this, and
Okay.
that's what we propose.
Now, are you familiar with the residential design standards in the zoning ordinance?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And just wanted to read one of them to you and ask you how you've complied with it. So it's section 345-62 entitled Residential Design Standards. Number C, it says building proportions shall be compatible with the predominant proportional relationship along a street, mass, scale, height, orientation, porches, entries, and parking shall be consistent with the neighborhood. How do you feel this project complies with that design standard?
I think it fits pretty well. I mean, we have utilized the characters you see on the block front and try to incorporate here. I mean, the porch is a porch, but I mean, there are 10 varieties of porches. So I mean, if you're trying to ask me that you're asking whether we match exactly, no, we did not. But it has some of the characters, and it's our interpretation of the design and then and what's allowed.
Do you know what the style of the surrounding homes is called?
Yes, Queen Anne.
Okay. All right. I think that's it for my questions for you. I do have a few questions for Mr. Haight. Oh.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Haight. Has your firm given an opinion on particular suitability on a prior application for this property?
Yes.
Okay, and are you familiar with what it was?
Yes.
Okay, and what was it?
So there are a few aspects. That was with a different application. Ms. Worstel provided that testimony, and it basically were aspects about the property in terms of the context and surrounding neighborhood, a review of the zone. We reviewed it in context of this application, but obviously there are different nuances. It was a different approach, so there are differences to what I provided tonight.
So wasn't Ms. Worstel's opinion was that an R3 compliant 4-family dwelling was particularly suitable for this property?
That was her opinion with that application.
Okay. Are you familiar with the recently adopted historic preservation element of the master plan?
Yes, I have reviewed it. We did not review it in context of this application. This has not been designated or landmarked, so that was not something directly analyzed, but we did draw on the consistency and overall aesthetics of adjacent properties, as Mr. Patel mentioned.
Are you aware that many properties on Glenwood have now been listed as historic resources in the historic preservation plan?
I'm not aware of that. I do not. I know that this property has not. It's vacant.
Okay. I did want to ask you, what is, I know you've talked about this being an R1 compliant project. Everyone acknowledges it's in the university zone. Are you familiar with the purpose of the university zone?
Yes. Yeah. We've reviewed the zoning standards for the university district. Purpose is to accommodate existing colleges and universities while preserving neighborhood stability and residential quality of life, especially in the areas bordering institutions of higher education.
Okay, and when we talk about preserving neighborhood stability, just generally, would you say there's been neighborhood stability in this on Glenwood?
I think there's been several applications on Glenwood and in the area. I think a lot of that is because of the nature of the university district and the fact that you have a lot of smaller parcels that cannot necessarily be developed for the intent of the university district for what I mentioned in my testimony. But yeah, I think there's definitely some interplay about the size of the parcels, some of the parcels being housing, and not necessarily being able to accommodate a university or college on them.
Okay, and have you been involved in any of the other applications? I'm just curious. It's
So Ms. Worstel actually has been directly involved. We did make some of that decision. She's had some of the history with the others, but we've discussed them in general. So I can't tell you I have particular knowledge
Okay.
of all the other applications, but there are other applications that have been approved and whatnot.
okay. So you had the opinion that this R1 compliant project is particularly suitable for this location. Is that correct?
I think there's a very good nuance. The property is particularly suitable for a residential use.
Okay. Would a 1 or 2 family dwelling also achieve that?
Yeah, it's a residential use.
Okay, so any residential use would be particularly suitable?
Again, I think part of my testimony, not to belabor the issue, but was a density standard, and that's what we used. So a 4-unit residential use is what we're proposing, and that I think is what would be an appropriate balance for this site. So
Okay.
it is a residential use.
And you said the density standard that you employed would allow 3.5 units, and you wanted to round up.
The zoning ordinance requires you to round up.
Okay, in an R1 zone, right? But not necessarily when you need a D variance.
No, so I think it should be important to reference that when I say it's particularly suitable for a residential use, that's akin to saying it's not particularly suitable for an industrial use, for a commercial use. So I would still say whether you're using an R3 or R1, if you're proposing a residential use as opposed to a college or an industrial or commercial, those broad use categories, is particularly suitable.
Okay.
Particularly suitable.
Okay. I'll get back to that in a moment, but are you obligated to round up under the zoning ordinance?
No, I think we're following what would be a normal process of applying appropriate zoning standards.
Okay, but you could do 3 units if you wanted to.
Could be left vacant.
Okay, that's true. So among the different uses that have been residential unit uses that have been discussed with respect to this property, there's a R3 compatible, R1 compatible, and then something that like similar to what already exists on the adjacent parcels. How would you analyze what's best? I mean, you can't have everything be particularly suitable, can you?
No, and I want to make that point clear. We're not proposing everything's particularly suitable. Adjacent properties are residential uses. Adjacent properties are multifamily, are less dense 1-2 family. What we're proposing is a residential use. That is consistent, and that's what we believe meets that particular suitability. Not industrial, not institutional, not rail yards, nothing of those sorts, but the general use of residential.
Okay. And do you believe that this part of Glenwood should be rezoned to R1?
Rezoned from a technical standpoint, no, it shouldn't be rezoned.
Okay.
Did you just say no, it should be rezoned?
Should not,
Thank you.
no.
Okay. And is this project compatible with the scale of the other homes in the row?
So what's occurring here is what occurs in other districts over time, as there are vacant properties that are undergoing application to this board for development, that they look at the zoning and apply the zoning standards. And it's very often that those zoning standards allow for larger sizes than the existing. And many of these existing homes in the city are decades old. They're just smaller footprints. So what's being proposed is, again, a larger footprint than the existing adjacent properties, but it's consistent with what would be permitted under under a residential zoning set of standards.
But would it preserve neighborhood stability consistent with the purpose of the university zone?
It's housing stock at an appropriate scale and appropriate density on a vacant lot, yes.
Okay, and would it preserve residential quality of life consistent with the purpose of the university zone?
I do believe so. It's a residential use in an appropriate context for this size property.
Okay, and I wanted to ask you about the rendering. Do you feel that it's an accurate reflection of the buildings on the block?
We did discuss that. So Mr. Patel did measure within sufficient proximity that we felt comfortable preparing the exhibit. And then with respect to the topography, we did have a surveyor weigh in on the slope of the street. So as it's shown on the exhibit, there's an incline as you go from west to east, and that's being shown accurately as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just one redirect question for Mr. Height. So there was a question about the density, and I know your testimony is regarding the residential use being particularly suitable. Just to be clear, the ADU does not actually count towards the density. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the 3.5 in the principal building, we're actually rounding that down to 3. Is that correct?
Yes, to get to the rounding issue, yes, I was being conservative, including it from a practical standpoint, but yeah, it does not count if you're in a zone that permits the ADU.
Okay, thank you.
So we did bring an expert also. I don't know if you...
I think what you should do is this. I think you have an objector case.
Yes.
I think you should put on.
Okay.
And then after that, we'll have, there's public here, and the public could either question Mr. Wine's experts or yours, or they could just give comment. I think that would streamline a little bit.
Okay, so we're ready. Our planning expert has been before this board last year. Her name is Colleen McGurk from Swift Stall and McGurk. Is that? Tell me if I'm getting this wrong.
No, that's correct.
Okay. So Colleen, is your
Need to swear her in first.
oh, sorry about that. Apologies. Yeah.
No problem.
And is this your only witness? Or do you have-
We have my clients are going to briefly testify as fact witnesses.
Good evening.
Let me know when you're ready.
Okay.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state and spell your full name.
Colleen McGurk, Colleen, last name McGurk.
Okay. Ms. McGurk, is your license still current?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Do you accept her credentials or? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. So.
Okay. So tonight I will be discussing whether the application satisfies the burden of proof for the relief requested, whether the site is particularly suited for the proposed use, whether the proposed use will legitimately address a public purpose or a demonstrated need, and the anticipated impacts to the streetscape, to the immediate neighbors, to the Jersey City Master Plan, and to the Jersey City zoning scheme, if the relief is granted. The applicant is seeking a D1 use variance. They are also requiring 3 C variances. The subject property is located at 128 Glenwood Avenue, Block 3204, Lot 58, and consists of 3,581 square feet and is located within the University Zoning District. So the first question is the site ideally suited for the proposed use? This is a 2-prong analysis. Is the location ideally suited for the proposed use, and is the site itself ideally suited for the proposed use? The parcel in question has 25 feet of frontage and a depth of 143 feet. It is slightly more elongated version of the 25 by 100 foot lot. When Jersey City was being urbanized, if someone was looking to put up a multi-unit building, they would assemble 3 or more adjacent lots in order to reach a minimum of 75 foot of frontage. A 25 by 143 foot lot is poorly suited for a multi-unit residential building because it is far too narrow. A good site for a multi-unit building would be a parcel with 80 or 90 feet of frontage. This allows for a 60-foot wide building footprint, which is the most efficient layout for an elongated lot, and still allow for reasonable side yards. And I am aware that they are meeting, the bulk variances that they're cited for with relation to the R1 zone, but they are not meeting the side yard setbacks for the U zone. This application is for a 3-story, 3-unit building with a total of 11 bedrooms, and also a 2-story, 2-bedroom ADU. In addition to the use variance, the applicant is requesting 2 bulk variances for side yard. 10 feet is required on each side, whereas 2 and 3.33 is proposed. Moskowitz defines a buffer as open spaces, landscaped areas, fences, walls, berms, or any combination thereof used to physically separate or screen one use or property for another so as to visually shield or block noise, lights, or other nuisances. This is a non-permitted use being proposed next to single-family dwellings and a much larger use, a multifamily use next to the existing, smaller, quieter homes, and should therefore do as much as possible to mitigate the negative impacts, since the applicant is requesting the board to approve a D1 use variance, which must show that the benefits outweigh any negatives. Therefore, in my opinion, the buffers are insufficient. An additional bulk variance for building height for the ADU is required. 15-foot max is allowed for accessory structures, whereas the applicant is proposing 18. A further indication that this uses that are being proposed is too intense for the lot in this zone. If the applicant wishes to increase the height, this variance should be mitigated by increasing the buffers. Also, while I understand that they are meeting fire code, it is a concern that there is only 3.33 feet along one side, 2 on the other is completely inaccessible, 3 is the minimum, but is that good planning? 4 feet is normally a safer setback because sometimes there are things in the way. If EMTs need to get to the back of the ADU or firefighters and equipment, 3.33 feet is the bare minimum. And finally, the 2024 Historic Preservation Master Plan element lists multiple dwellings on Glenwood Avenue, including the adjacent dwellings, as inventory of historic resources and part of the Historic Preservation Plan. So it is vital to maintain the integrity of this row of houses. Would the proposed use serve a critical public purpose? The applicant has not demonstrated that the proposed use would satisfy a critical public purpose. Does Jersey City or the region have a deficit of this type of housing units proposed in this application? This has not been established. If these were affordable housing units, possibly, but they are not. They are proposed as straight market rate units for the general population, so I don't think that we could say that they would serve a critical public purpose. Impacts to the master plan and zoning framework. Jersey City's most recent master plan, which was only done in 2021, so very recent, includes a section titled Urban Design Framework. This section states, quote, review new development proposals for scale, typology, and architectural character. The city should consider the long-term impact of all new developments on the larger neighborhood, street life, and pedestrian movement. In addition, even though some buildings or areas may not be designated historic, every attempt should be made to preserve them and reflect their unique architectural character and scale in the new neighborhoods. This proposal will negatively impact the existing single-family dwellings. The master plan urges the city to make these determinations. It is urging, in this case, the zoning board to do so, as you represent the city in these proceedings. So while zoning board application and evaluations tend to focus on the criteria to evaluate the grounds for variances, the master plan is urging you to go beyond that and take a closer look at the long-term impacts of proposed development, especially on the adjacent neighborhood and streetscape, and not doing so will impair the master plan. We've already gone over the stated purpose of the university district, so I won't go into that again. The master plan looked at the U-zone and did not recommend this lot or other adjacent residential lots be rezoned. In fact, the master plan states, quote, beyond revisions to the U district, another zoning mechanism to explore would be the creation of an overlay zone. An overlay zone would allow the university to continue to grow within a defined area without rendering existing residential uses non-conforming. Underlining bulk regulations would still apply so that any development is consistent with the surrounding built environment. This would apply to the side yard buffers. The 2021 master plan contains a table summarizing all variances issued by this board between 2000 and 2019. For the institutional districts, which comprise the university, the medical, and the government districts, this board issued only 6 variances during that period of time, or 0.4% of all variances issued. So issuing variances in these districts has been exceedingly rare, almost unprecedented. The Jersey City Master Plan also contains extensive design standards. The residential design standards state, for example, that, quote, the design and layout of buildings and parking areas shall provide an aesthetically pleasing appearance and efficient arrangement compatible with the character of surrounding development. To the greatest extent possible, new residential development in existing neighborhoods shall be integrated with the housing units in the adjacent area. New development in existing neighborhoods shall incorporate distinctive architectural characteristics of surrounding developments. Neighborhoods shall incorporate distinctive architectural characteristics of surrounding developments, such as windows and door detailing, decoration, material, roof style and pitch, height, and porches. There are no true Victorian elements, so this development doesn't satisfy this design standard. Also, the substantially larger bulk, the huge blank wall, and the wall with the 15 windows clearly indicate that this structure is dissimilar and therefore not in character with the neighborhood. There are also a number of design standards in the Jersey City Code that are relevant to this proposal. Quote, building proportions shall be compatible with the predominant proportional relationship along the street. Mass, scale, height, orientation, porches, entries, and parking shall be consistent with the neighborhood. Monotonous, uninterrupted expanses of walls should be avoided. Facade articulations such as recesses, projections, columns, openings.
Repeat that and slow down.
Sorry. Facade articulations such as recesses, projections, columns, openings, ornamentation, decorative materials, and colors shall be used to add texture and detail. The applicant is using the R1 zone as an appropriate zoning comparison for the proposed use. But the R1 zone does not even exist within this block, so not the surrounding built environment. The nearest R1 zone is located to the north on Highland Avenue. Therefore, the criteria simply does not exist when looking at the character of the lots on this street. The most important difference is that ADUs are not permitted within the U zone or the R3 zone, the only two zoning districts on this street. But let's look at what the 2021 master plan states. There are several valuable comments and recommendations. Quote, Jersey City has 4 zoning districts aimed at low-scale 1 and 2 family residences. The largest of these is the R1 zone, which is found in neighborhoods throughout the city, mainly in its central spine and parts of the downtown. This district is meant both to accommodate existing houses and to permit infill with 1 and 2 family dwellings that preserve the streetscape, use on-street parking where frontages are narrow, and maintain low-rise character. Another quote regarding the 2019-2020 study for the R1 zone and the variances that have been granted, quote, finally, public engagement during this planning process indicated deep concerns about the loss of existing homes and the resulting change in neighborhood character. Additionally, quote, it is important to note that the intent of this land use element is that the R1 zone remain predominantly a 1 and 2 family district. With regard to adverse impacts to the neighborhood streetscape, I appreciate the fact that the applicant, ever having the previous application denied, the applicant has revised the plans to potentially avoid res judicata and be able to come back to the zoning board. The number of stories have been reduced from 4 to 3, but they have not reduced the intensity. There are still 4 units and a total of 11 bedrooms. Have these changes made the project a better fit for the existing single-family streetscape? I don't think so. Also, the treatment of the facade of the proposed building, while attractive, has a very modern look as opposed to the existing neighborhood homes, which are Queen Anne architectural style. And the proposed building, given its size and bulk, simply does not fit in with the surrounding streetscape. I also appreciate the fact that if we look at the surrounding area, we find various buildings, primarily institutional buildings, with much larger footprints, but they are also on much larger lots, and they are permitted uses under the zoning. The applicant is proposing a use and structure that is too large and too intense for the lot. Yes, they are adhering to the density, bulk, and impervious coverage, but this goes towards the negative impacts, and the fact that the applicant is requesting a use variance, and this is not a permitted use, it should fit in with the character of the neighborhood, and there are historically multiple single-family dwellings with a certain architectural style that this new structure is dissimilar to and will create negative impacts, and the standard requires that the applicant reduce, eliminate, or at least mitigate these impacts, and this proposal has not done this. There is also the question of the blank wall, the northwest elevation of the proposed building. It is 75 feet long and 36.75 feet high, and only 2 feet from the lot line. So 2,756 square foot of blank wall from my client's property to the west. This will reduce the sunlight for the windows on their homes that face this wall. They will be staring at a blank wall, unadorned, only feet away. It will also negatively impact the adjacent residents' enjoyment of their yards. It is also contrary to the city's very explicit design standards. The wall on the southeast elevation of the proposed building would have 15 windows. That wall would be only 3.33 feet from the property line, and the adjacent home, as stated earlier, is 0.9 feet from the property line. They will also have a reduction in sunlight and air and also privacy. Noise is another concern for the neighbors, since the applicant is still proposing a 656 square foot rooftop deck and 3 balconies. One of the fundamental purposes of zoning is to ensure that adequate light and air are not compromised. So the required proofs for granting a use variance. Use variances should be viewed as the exception and not something that zoning boards should be handing out routinely or that applicants should feel entitled to. D1 use variances, according to the MLUL and the Jersey City Land Development Regulations, shall be granted only in particular cases and for special reasons without causing substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially impairing the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. In order to merit the requested use variance, the applicant must satisfy both the positive criteria and the negative criteria. Positive criteria. An application is for an inherently beneficial use. The property owner suffers undue hardship. A site is deemed particularly suitable. The proposed use would advance the purposes of zoning. The proposed use is not inherently beneficial. I don't believe any hardship has been invoked. And the applicant has argued that the site is particularly suitable, an assertion that I dispute, and that the proposed uses would materially advance the purposes of zoning, an assertion that I also dispute. They stated purpose C, to provide adequate light, air, and open space, which I do not believe they are doing. Purpose E, to promote the establishment of appropriate population densities that will contribute to the well-being of persons in the neighborhood. 11 bedrooms, and the building is out of scale and dissimilar to the adjacent single-family dwellings. Purpose I, to promote a desirable visual environment. I don't think that the proposed side yards and blank wall would constitute a creative development or a desirable visual environment. In my opinion, the proposed application does not satisfy the positive criteria. I have already discussed how approving this application would compromise the city's master plan, zoning ordinance, and the character of the housing on either side of this site, so I don't believe it satisfies the negative criteria either. The applicant's statement of principal points states that the balancing criteria is met since this is a better planning alternative than the permitted uses. I don't believe that it has been conclusively proven that this is particularly suited for this proposed use. With regard to the buffer area not being needed since the proposed use is residential, the 10-foot buffer is a requirement for permitted residential uses within this zone. For since things as dormitories, sororities, and fraternity.
Say that again, can't hear you.
I said the 10-foot buffer is a requirement for the permitted residential uses within this zone, which would include dormitories, sorority, and fraternity houses. But it is needed to separate more intense residential uses, such as this one, from the existing single-family dwellings, especially since the proposed use contains a total of 11 bedrooms and also a roof deck, which will create additional noise that will impact the quality of life for the surrounding properties. As to the question of whether the U zoning is effectively functionally obsolete as the university is seeking to divest its properties, this is a question that should be properly addressed at the governing body, not the zoning board. Zoning boards are not asked to opine on whether a certain type of zoning is functionally obsolete. The board is being asked to deliberate regarding the use variance request only. The property is in the U district. The 2021 master plan reviewed the district and did not recommend any zone changes to this property or other U zone properties in this area. The applicant has stated that the project has been designed to meet the requirements of the R1 zoning district, but the R1 zone's stated purpose, the purpose of this district is to accommodate existing housing, encourage compatible infill, preserve the streetscape, and utilize and preserve on-street parking where low lot frontage is narrow. The R1 zone impacts every ward in Jersey City. Therefore, it is important that this zone acknowledge and celebrate the culture and physical assets of existing communities, as well as create high-quality, diverse housing types in all neighborhoods that will accommodate the needs of all types of residents. This proposed development does not complement the existing uses and streetscape. The master plan also states, quote, promote smaller, more affordable units, but intent is to keep mainly 1- and 2-family dwellings. In summary, is my opinion, the applicant fails to satisfy either the positive or the negative criteria, and therefore must be denied. I just have a few photos of the existing dwellings on the street and the other structures. I do not have a photo of the most recently constructed dwelling at 124 Glenwood, but I believe my client does. So that's just directly across the street. Sorry. 125 Glenwood and some of the other single-family attached dwellings. Again, that is just across the street. You can see the small-scale type dwellings that are located there. That's 131 Glenwood, the larger apartment building on larger lot. Those are the dwellings directly adjacent to 128 Glenwood. That's the vacant lot. And that is my client's property at 130 Glenwood. And those are the dormitories directly adjacent to their property. Just to give you an idea of the neighborhood. That concludes my testimony. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. We'll hold until the end. Do you have questions? You're going to cross-examine anything?
I will, but if you'd like
Yeah, okay.
Sure. Oh.
Okay, so Mr. McCormack is going to be our next witness.
Good evening, everyone.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And your full name, spell it, and address.
Nathan McCormack, Nathan. McCormack is MacCormack.
And your address?
130 Glenwood Avenue, Jersey City. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Mr. McCormack.
Good evening.
What brought you to Jersey City and specifically to McGinley Square?
So I moved to Jersey City about 10 years ago when I married my wife, who was already residing in Dixon Mills downtown. And so I moved into her condo from Brooklyn and lived in our one-bedroom condo for several years until we decided we were ready to have some green space, a little more space, and hopefully a house. I myself am a court reporter. My wife is an artist, and so we were really not sure if we could even afford to buy a house in Jersey City. And much to our surprise, we found that if you went up the hill, we could still find a house that was both desirable and affordable in the McGinley Square neighborhood. So after seeing only a few properties, we quickly realized what a special house and block Glenwood Avenue is, and decided to make the move. And we discovered this row of historic homes built in 1895, 6 homes in total, actually 5 of which were standing when we purchased our home, built in 1895, that was referred to as the Mayhew Terrace Cottages, that do have the historic detail of the Queen Anne Victorian style that was happening at that time.
Okay, and what's happened to the block since you purchased your home?
So since we purchased our home, St. Peter's University decided to divest of much of their housing stock, or buildings, I should say, on the north side of the block, which is where we are. So that included 124 Glenwood Avenue, which was also a project overseen by the team that's here tonight. 128 Glenwood Avenue, other properties as well that are in the immediate area. And so adjacent to us as well were the former dorms for St. Peter's University that take up about half the block. And so literally on either side of us, we found ourselves with either a vacant property or what used to be dorms being redeveloped. And so our block has faced significant change in a short amount of time. And while we welcome the next wave of development, and I can't wait to see people living in the form of dormitories, I'm hoping to see responsible development on both sides, of course.
Okay, and what are your concerns about the proposed project at 128 Glenwood?
So I'm not sure if anyone is aware on the board tonight, but 124 Glenwood Avenue was a project that was deemed as of right. I have neighbors here tonight that will speak about that project that live right next door to it. This is just a few doors away from us, and essentially a very similar, at the time identical plan was proposed for 128 Glenwood Avenue as 124 Glenwood Avenue. That story actually managed to get some press. We were hoping that the attention might actually lead to the developer handling things in a much more responsible way than ultimately transpired. So basically, since that project was developed, we were able to see essentially what we can expect next door to us, which is a structure that was built that does not match the existing streetscape. even though in community meetings we were guaranteed that the setback would conform to the prevailing setback of the neighboring properties, it doesn't conform to anything. I believe there are photos that will demonstrate this shortly. We've had to report C-click fixes many times due to construction debris at 124 being dumped at 128. I know citations have been issued, but in essence, that's what we've been dealing with.
Okay, and what would you like to see happen at 128?
I would like to see something similar in scale to our house, essentially. Our house, along with these other homes in our historic enclave, are currently on the Historic Preservation Master Plan, and I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that something that's being built right next door to us could also conform to what that Historic Master Plan would entail. So as of now, I would love to see something like that be approved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, and you ready, Sharon? Okay, Colleen, do you think? So we just need to get another little presentation up and that Ms. McCormick would like to use. Did you bring handouts?
I have a couple.
Oh, you do?
Maybe we could put it on the screen.
Okay, can she pull it up on this? Is it on the screen? Okay.
Hello, Commissioners. Nice to see you all.
Raise your right hand and swear first. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you, and please state and spell your full name and address.
Shireen McCormack, SHIRIN MACCORMACK.
Your address, ma'am.
Address is 130 Glenwood Ave. We can.
Do you need Colleen's help to look at the, to pull up the presentation on the screen, or do you?
Oh, no.
Let's just,
I guess I should get it. Oh, I don't know what this is.
okay.
Oh, it's still the other thing, so hold on. Might be this. Yeah. Do you want to do the streetscape first?
I mean, it's up to you. Okay, so Ms. McCormick.
I am.
Okay.
I don't know how to share the screen, but. What's plugged in?
You want us to postpone it? You want to talk to me?
Yeah.
Okay. You might postpone it because I'm looking at
Was up a
Can you
second
pull
ago.
up the record while they're doing this?
Yeah, sorry.
Sure.
Say that.
Yes, sorry.
We're off the record? Okay.
Okay, so that's hard to get.
Is it, it was up.
It was up.
It was up a second ago. Is there something we're doing wrong?
Is it because we have two USBs?
Is that a USB? Thank you.
Thank you. I like the last person. Do you, so Colleen,
Should I take?
Maybe you have to save it.
Sorry. Address was 130 Glenwood Avenue.
So.
Oh, you might if I'm looking at the,
It's the same.
is that wrong then?
We live next door to it. That's all.
Oh, I'm- Okay. You're on the other side.
It's that one.
Sorry.
She has it on the drive or something. Okay. Did you save it?
Yeah, it's right here. I just don't know how to.
So maybe once it's downloaded, can you take your USB out?
Oh, you want me to download it?
Yeah.
Okay.
If that's okay.
It's weird because it was up a second ago and then you hit something over here and then it didn't.
Was mine up?
Yeah, it was up on the screen and then.
Yeah, it's usually this cord.
Okay.
Did we
Hold on.
shift this?
I haven't moved them. I just added mine here.
It might be because there's more than one USB. So open what you need.
Should I take mine out then? This one?
After you saved it.
I've just downloaded it.
Okay. So
I've just
then
downloaded
just
it.
try
How do I get that? I don't know how to get it out.
Can you just take it out?
That's a rabbit hole if you start going down there.
All right. I mean, you're not supposed to do it that way, but now somewhere.
I paused it already. Oh, you started the recording
Okay, let's get started.
Thank you.
Okay, so thanks for trying to help us resolve this technical issue. And now everyone has a handout, which we'd like to. I think Ms. McGurk's presentation we'd like to mark 01, and it was emailed to Tanya and to Vinny earlier this evening, and then if we could mark this one 02 for identification.
Email to me?
Yeah, around like 4 in the afternoon. Yeah.
I don't think I've got it.
Okay. I think.
Not that it means anything.
Okay. We have it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So does everyone else.
Okay. Okay. So, Ms. McCormick, did you review the developer's plans for 128 Glenwood?
Yes, I have. I made a document that is before you that shows basically the scale of what's been happening on our block. So the first page of the document basically shows the purported scale. Oh,
okay. I mean, we usually.
I'm sorry, are you talking for the record? Because I need to hear it.
Yeah. Mr. Wine, did you want to? I mean, Mr. Wine wanted to have this authenticated before we move it into evidence, but I think we're doing that now, and then when we finish discussing it, we'll ask that it be moved into evidence.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to know what it is we're looking at.
Okay. Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
we haven't moved it into evidence yet.
So as I was saying, the first page shows what the developer is purporting that the scale would be for the building at 128, and it is actually using the purported scale for the structure that was denied at 128 and the structure that was approved at 124. And the first page basically shows how they purported that each of those two structures would fit in this streetscape. In terms of scale. And then the next page after that shows what Community's streetscape rendering shown on February 8th, 2024.
When you say Community, you prepared this,
I prepared
right?
this,
Okay.
yes, I did. For the February 8th, 2024 hearing regarding 128 Glenwood, which resulted, as we know, in a 7 out of 7 denial. If you go to the next page, it basically shows what's happening now. This is an actual photo, and you can see that the building at 124 is much larger than both renderings. So basically, it's much larger than what even I had imagined that it might be. I knew it was out of scale, but I didn't realize just how out of scale it would be. And the next page as well shows that. Now, while you're looking at these, I would love to ask you to please note the roof line height of 124 versus 122 on page 1 versus page 3. The roof line height of page 1 of the height of 124 versus 122 Glenwood on page 1 versus 3. Also, note that for example, the scale is totally off. Note that 126 has 6 steps from its grass to its front porch, while 124 has 18 steps. That's 3 times more. Because 124 is so much higher up and so much larger and out of scale. Please note that page 1 shows the basement level of 124 is halfway submerged underground with its window just above ground level. That's on page 1, that it shows it that way, versus the actual photos on page 3 and 4, which show basement level actually sits entirely above ground. That level is not submerged at all. Its window is high up, nowhere near the ground. Look how in the photos of the actual building.
So, did you take these photographs, Ms. McCormick?
I did take these photos.
Okay, and is there any objection to us moving it into evidence?
So I just want to go back a little bit, and I didn't want to cut off Ms. McCormick.
Can I answer questions after?
No, this is a document that we're relying on, so we have to get past the objections to it before you can start to talk about it, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't want to cut you off, but I just, again, I have no general opposition to Ms. McCormick speaking about a package she created, but the only objections I just want to place on the record with respect to pages 1 and 2 are, well, 2 things are both relevance, as this is for an application seemingly not before the board this evening, and then also regarding 1 and 2, you know, I see the notation that it says developer streetscape rendering. You know, I represent the developer. I certainly can't authenticate this. I guess it doesn't apply to 2. Page 2, if that's the community's streetscape rendering, again, I don't believe it's relevant. This is not the application before the board. But with respect to 1, I certainly just, again, I have no issue with Ms. McCormick speaking to it. That's fine. I just need the board to understand that this is A, not the application before you, and B, I certainly would not stipulate that this is a developer's streetscape rendering.
Okay.
One second. Yeah, the remaining photographs, I mean, as long as Ms. McCormick can confirm for the record that she took them. Again, I'm not sure the relevance. I'm sure we'll hear about it, but I don't believe I have an objection to the photographs.
Okay, and I believe I'm if we took page 1 out of this exhibit, I'm fine with that, because this board received a streetscape today as an exhibit from your architect that you prepared that should give them an idea of what your position is regarding the impact of the streetscape. So I think that's fine.
So page 1, I'm fine with that if page 1 is removed. And again, page 2 seemingly refers to a development that, again, is not what is proposed here tonight.
It's the denied.
So,
Yeah, I'm fine with those stipulations. I have no problem with that. So we can just ignore the first page.
Yes. A few months ago. Yes. Haven't been adjusted at all.
I need one speaker. Ben, use the mic, because I'm not sure anybody can hear you. But it accurately depicts.
It accurately depicts what's shown in this photograph, correct? At the time you took it and at today.
Yes.
There's a fly here that's coming around. Great.
Yes, the photos haven't been adjusted at all.
So again,
Fine.
I take no exception to the photographs, which begin on page 3, and I would just ask the board if Ms. Hajianis seemingly is acceptable to
Remove page 1.
remove pages 1 and 2
Yeah,
from the
yeah, I have no problem with that, because you received
Page
something
1,
more
right?
up to date.
and page 2 as well.
Wait, you're speaking over one another, and I can't take that. Cynthia, you were saying I have no pages.
I have no objection to removing page 1. I'm not, and we have photos, so I'm not sure what page 2 really does for us. I think the photos are the most important.
I think page 2 is just a little bit misleading to the board, because again, it's seemingly for a 4-story building, which is not what's being proposed here.
Okay. So let's just focus on the photographs then, and
Yeah.
we can remove page 1 and 2, and I would like to remove the photographs into evidence.
Fine.
Okay.
So
thanks.
now, where are we? 01 is just a series of 4 pages of photographs. 02?
I believe it's 3 pages of photographs.
I think it's 4.
Oh, is it?
It's 4.
No, it's 4, but
Okay.
you were saying we're marking this as 02? What's 01?
It was Ms. McGurk's presentation,
Oh,
her
I'm sorry.
PowerPoint.
I missed that.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Yes.
Thank you. I was just pointing out that basically in this building at 124, the entire first floor had been presented as halfway submerged, and it actually sits entirely above ground, raising the scale even greater than anyone had anticipated, and certainly far more than had been purported by the owner, the team for the owner. Also, the actual basement window of 124 is much higher than even the neighboring property with the red gable at the top, even higher than 126's first floor windows. So the basement of the one window is higher than the first floor windows of the neighboring unit. And also, please note that the height of the front porch on 124, look at where it is versus its neighbors at 122 or 126.
Which photograph are you referring to? When
So if
say
you look
that?
at page 3, or 4, 3 or 4, you can see the front porch height, and it's.
Wait, we're discussing 124?
Yeah, and so this also is about what we have to look forward to in terms of what's conveyed in plans versus what actually happens.
So could you just explain to the board what is it specifically you're concerned about with 128?
I am very concerned about the accuracy. I'm very concerned about the accuracy of any measurements. And I think that between the board and the developer, a very close attention has to be paid in this case because of the precedent that has been set in the past. And that precedent has been set at 124 when we were promised in many meetings that the front wall of the structure would align with the front wall of the surrounding Mayhew Terrace homes. And it absolutely doesn't, as you can see on page 5, as well as the height and the overall scale of everything. Nothing aligns and nothing is to scale at all with what had been presented. And it gives us cause for great concern.
You're trying to paint some picture about character of my client. That's not.
It's about the plans.
On the speaker.
She's describing her concern. She's
So I think if we can keep it to the proposal at 128, I have no issue with that. I'm not aware of any zoning violations or
she's
anything.
she's a fact witness. She's talking about her frame of mind. I don't see anything objectionable about that.
Okay, just try not to use disparaging language or anything.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, so
Definitely not. Nothing but respect.
okay, so when you say there's a precedent, I mean you're talking about the height and the front setback, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And just matching what we've been told and what the board is being told.
Okay. And
And matching surroundings.
okay. And is there anything else you'd like to explain to the board?
Yes, I would love the opportunity to say first and foremost that this application is very similar to a previously denied application. It's basically the same application that was previously denied, 7 out of 7 votes, that has just been turned sideways with part of it becoming an ADU. And it has the same impact and the same detrimental impact on the neighbors. And we've been working really hard to work as community of volunteer residents within the community group, and we feel that we haven't been worked with, and we keep trying. So we just feel that in terms of these plans, we haven't even been asked for a meeting or shown them or had a chance to provide feedback. And, there's an ADU. I object to it, not just the height exceeding what's allowed, but also being included at all because it adds unnecessary density and it will wall in the neighbors on both sides. It will create less air, light, and open space, and it doesn't align. The rear setbacks don't align. The front setbacks don't align, and the height is a concern too with the rooftop and its bulkhead. And as well. There has been no effort to even try to blend in terms of the aesthetics. As well, I think that 13 feet of patio space in the back that's not built up is extremely misaligned with the surroundings. And as someone already mentioned, this row of homes has historic significance and have been added last spring to the city's master plan historic preservation element. There have been a few very significant civil rights leaders, Black women who have lived in this row of homes. Ella Barksdale Brown had lived at 120 Glenwood Ave, and India and Edwards resided at 122 Glenwood. And with that, work that we've done as the community to make sure that these get listed in the HP's inventory, we feel that it's of the utmost importance to protect the historical integrity architecturally and culturally. I do also have an issue with the rooftop. The rooftop will not blend with the surroundings. It will add noise pollution and garbage, and it will further destroy the quality of life of what residents love so much about this neighborhood that we feel is special. I also wanted to point out the aesthetics. They look extremely contemporary compared to surroundings. The door, the buffer is a huge problem as well. The 10-foot buffer is required in the zone, and like I said before, the setbacks are extremely concerning. I think that they would need a lot of extra attention to make sure that the measurements are correct. I know that in general, what we're talking about here in terms of massive infrastructure is an out-of-scale infrastructure that doesn't fit is 3 to 5 times more density than surroundings, 4 units versus 1. Massively more than twice as much bulk square footage than adjacent properties. And we're talking about 11 bedrooms versus 3, a backyard of only 13 foot when like my backyard and the other home on the other side has 78 feet. And so it's really going to create a walling in of in a change in quality of life for the residents who are living there, the neighbors. And
are we... I just do want to say, if your testimony sort of replicates things that have already been said, let's try to move along.
Okay, no problem. Also, we've had surveys done and they don't match the owner's surveys, so that is a concern. And I think that you can take the same thing that was denied and turn it this way and that, sideways, upside down, flip it. It's still the same thing on a different day, shown a slightly different way. It still has the same impact. I think it's created basically a tenement building, and I believe that zoning boards were largely created to prevent that. As well, I wanted to point out that the purpose of the zoning was created to, of the university zoning, was created to, create that balance. And the neighbors have had anything but balance and what the purpose of the zoning is supposed to be for in the last few years. And those laws have been created intentionally, and we hope that this board will respect them because a lot of us moved to this neighborhood because of the protection that zoning offered. And I also just wanted to mention, and I will wrap up quickly, I promise.
So last comment, Sharon.
Sure.
if you have anything else to say to the board.
I do. I wanted to say that we do support responsible, thoughtful development. And we look forward to our new neighbors at the other properties that have been before you because we thought that they showed a thoughtful and meaningful plan. And they included community vision rather than completely disregarding the community vision. And I wanted to point out that the work that we've been doing in community has been advocating for tree plantings and garbage cleanups and donating bike helmets to kids and connecting neighbors to local businesses, partnering with other neighborhood groups, and really improving overall life in the neighborhood. And we are concerned about privacy, security, water mitigation, the precedent this might set if it is approved, overdevelopment, and cumulative impact. We're not against development. We just are for responsible development, and we do not support this project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think that concludes our objector presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, before we ask any questions. Oh, okay.
I guess I'll start with Ms. McCormick. I really have one question. You talk about working together, not opposing all development, responsible development, you're not against development. Those are things I just heard you say. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you, as president of your neighborhood association, apply over my client's objection, strenuous objection, and actually successfully petition the city to partner with you to receive funding to actually prevent any development of this property and to turn it into a community garden and open
I'm going to
space?
object to this question. I don't think it's within the scope of her testimony.
I think it is. We've had multiple meetings where we talk about working together, responsible development, and again, over strenuous objection from my client, it was a bulldozed effort to prevent any development of this property, which I give Ms. McCormick a lot of credit because she got the city to sign on to that. So that's the question.
I would have objected to that question as well. I would say,
No, I believe she should answer it, but the answer is yes.
so the community's mission is to improve the neighborhood, and we realize that development looks different ways for different circumstances. This is a very special circumstance with, some room for some ambiguity, and what happens at these board meetings will determine the way this lot is used permanently. So with that in mind, it's very important. It's critical for us to look at the holistic picture of what has been going on in the lot and the streetscape, the neighborhood. And we do welcome other development. Typically, we just ask for a few variances, for a few conditions for approval on lots. We have worked with developers who have been very receptive to community feedback. This lot, however, is a unique situation, and we think it's very special. And we recognize that development looks different ways, and development can happen in different ways. And I think that's what all of this has been about. Our goal on this denser block than all of the surrounding blocks is to improve the holistic neighborhood.
So you didn't really answer my question. Did you, as president of the McGinley Square Community Board, put forth a resolution with the city, which was approved, in order to apply for funding to prevent any actual infrastructure and structural development on this property?
We worked not to prohibit all development on the property, but we worked in order to encourage what we believe is development that will improve the neighborhood and protect what's so special about it. And we did so hoping to engage in a conversation. And yeah, thank you. Thank you.
But with respect, you're not answering the question.
I believe I have.
I think she's saying that they put forth the resolution to enter a dialogue with
Yes.
your client. I
Thank
think that's
you.
what she's saying.
Okay,
I believe. Was a ploy, or was something, to want to open up a dialogue, I think.
It was for a dialogue, a conversation.
and this is despite the fact that, again, we objected and asked you not to do that, and you put it forth again.
Nothing was done to stop a conversation and an array of options, because we think that that is the way to, encourage good development, responsible development, and community-focused development, is to look at different options. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Mr. McCormick. 124, did that come before this board?
124 was in the R3, so it was considered as of right, and it went to before the planning board.
Okay. I can't say that I remember a lot of things, but I didn't remember
It was
that.
denied and then reheard and then approved.
I see. Okay.
So I'm not going to ask Ms. McCormick anymore. I'm just going to ask the board to take judicial notice of the resolution that was adopted by City Council that would agree to partner for up to $1 million between up to 500,000 from the Green Acres program and up to another 500,000 put forth by the city in order to keep this property, again, over my client, the property owner's objection, as an open space.
That's incorrect.
Well, let's put it this way, Mr. Wine, we're going to come back another day, I don't
It's
think we're
incorrect.
finishing tonight.
Yeah.
But maybe you should bring that resolution in. I've never seen it. I've heard about it, but I've never
I
seen it.
I just have one question for
Yes.
redirect. So if you had been successful in applying for open space funding, what were you planning to do?
We actually notified the attorney who's asking these questions, so I'm a little surprised to be being asked them,
just
to be
saying, what
honest.
were you- what were
we
you
were,
planning to do?
we explained that, and I'll explain it now to this room. We were planning on engaging in a constructive conversation where if awarded any grant money, that could be just one component of the conversation. A conversation.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are we done with this young lady? Thank you. Okay. Oh, somebody else?
I do have some questions for Ms. McGurk as well. Ms. McGurk, I'm going to keep your questions relatively straightforward, relatively simple, and just speaking to your expertise as a planner in that capacity. And I know it was already about half an hour ago that you testified, but are you aware that the majority, if not all, of the university uses on this block frontage have been converted to residential?
No, I'm not aware of what the university is doing with all of their properties.
Well, they have sold all their properties
I
already.
am aware of that,
So
yes.
are you familiar with the block?
Somewhat, yes.
Have you studied the other uses up and down the entire block frontage?
I looked at the streetscape, yes, and I think 12 of the uses they look like single-family or maybe two-family, and the other uses were either apartment buildings or university uses.
So are you aware that what you refer to, I assume, as university uses being 136 and 140 Glenwood, are you aware that those were approved by this board for conversion to residential?
No.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I also want to ask you, you talked a lot about a 25-foot lot width as not being appropriate for multifamily residential. Are you aware that the most common lot width in zones in Jersey City is 25 feet?
Yes, my comment was referring to the fact that it's not ideal. So that's why I was discussing that as particularly suited. So multifamily on a 25-foot lot is not an ideal width for that type of use.
And you say not ideal, but,
But it certainly can happen.
and is it permitted in the zoning?
Yes, well, it's permitted in certain zones, yes.
Yes, so the city has recognized that 25 feet is appropriate for multifamily residential based on a density calculation for the lot size.
Yes, because the way that the city developed over the last however many decades, they were kind of stuck with 25-foot wide lots, and you have to be able to put something there.
Well, actually, are you aware that they actually updated the zoning as recently as 2023 to remove the designation for 2,500 square foot lots of one and two family houses, and specifically, just about a year and a half ago, actually changed that to be a density-based calculation?
Yes, I did read that.
So, do you still feel that the city is dealing with some old condition not reflective of what actual multifamily development should look like?
Well, I mean, they have 25-foot wide lots. That's not ideal situation in any case, but yes, they did update their ordinance to allow for development in the R1 zone, which you're comparing this lot to. So, yes,
In spite of the 25-foot lot width?
correct.
Okay, fair enough. I also want to ask, if you're familiar with the block frontage, I understand your client's property is located in the university zone, so to the extent they so much as, I mean, I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek, but wanted to move a blade of grass, they would have to be before this board to do anything to their property, is that right?
Yes.
Yes, because it's university zoned as well?
Mhm.
The other property,
Unless they do the overlay zone that the master plan discusses.
unless it changes, correct? The other properties that were heavily focused on, in your exhibit specifically, those, what we'll call those row houses of Queen Anne style, I guess we'll call them.
Yes, sorry, all I hear is the ice cream truck. But keep going.
We get out of here, 10. Do you know what the zoning is for those other buildings?
The R3?
Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah.
So, would it be fair to say that, assuming they got demo approval, all those other properties could demolish their buildings as they exist today and construct a four-story, four-unit residential development?
They could also, though, now they have to go through a historic examination because of the master plan element that was introduced in 2024. But if they jump through those hoops, they could do that, yes.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I'll also ask you, I'm going to jump right into, you mentioned, and I'm going to assume it was just a mistake, but that's okay. I just want to clear it up for the record. You wrote that and you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the master plan, again, talks about the R1 being limited to 1 and 2 families. Is that correct?
Not limited, but it said something about the intent was to mainly keep it comprised of 1 and 2 family.
And that master plan is from 2021?
Correct.
And then in 2023, the zoning that was found to be consistent with the master plan as it went through planning board review and subsequent governing body adoption actually obviously interpreted that to mean that it should be a density-based calculation. Is that correct?
Well, the master plan went on to recommend additional dwelling units be permitted in the R1 because they noted that so many illegal units were being constructed and that there was a need for more affordable housing and smaller apartment units. They did recommend additional density.
Okay. All right, perfect. And then my last question for you, and this is, I'm asking you objectively as a planner, or subjectively, I guess, as a planner. Would you support a dormitory application for this property, assuming that it could not be 5 foot wide and would require buffer variance relief?
A dormitory would probably not be appropriate, but there are other uses within the U zone or other smaller residential uses that would be more appropriate.
So I'm going to ask you as well, would a fraternity house be appropriate?
That is a permitted use.
And would it be appropriate, in your opinion, as a planner, for this property?
It could be, yes.
At 4 stories and assuming it would need buffer variance relief, because again, you cannot construct a 5 foot wide building.
I'm not saying that it should be 4 stories because, again, they could not meet the buffer. So any proposal for this lot should take that into account and mitigate the fact that they have a narrow lot. They can't provide the required buffer, so they should mitigate that by proposing a smaller structure.
So wouldn't mitigation by proposing a smaller structure not be reducing a story from what's permitted in the ordinance, being less coverage than what's permitted in the ordinance for this zone, being more appropriate on setbacks than what is required in this zone, and ultimately being a less intensive use than what is permitted in this zone? Is that not mitigation?
That's some mitigation, but it's still a 75-foot long building next to single-family dwellings with all of the other criteria that I noted. 2 feet from the side yard, no windows, not the correct architectural style. So while they did mitigate some of the issues, it's not completely eliminating the negative impacts, which I feel are more substantial than the potential benefits.
Well, is that the test, that you have to eliminate all negative impacts?
No, it just needs to not be as, the negative impact should not outweigh the benefits.
Substantially.
Correct, yes.
Understood. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I think for the moment, it might benefit, go ahead, you were going to say something?
I'm just going to ask.
Yes, go ahead.
And whether this is the appropriate time or after public, I just wanted to recall Mr. Height to ask a couple of follow-up questions.
Well, maybe this is the time now to call Mr. Height.
Okay, so Charles, you're obviously still under.
Yes.
You heard all of Ms. McGurk's testimony, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And she certainly, we have take no exception to her being a licensed planner, right?
No, she's represented a licensed planner.
So I'm just going to ask you to touch on and maybe reiterate a couple of the points she talked about regarding density for this proposed property or for this existing property as being perhaps not appropriate. She talked about not mitigating the relief that we're seeking. She talked about, comparisons to the R1 versus the R3. So if you could just, and I'm going to ask you to be brief, but if you could just go over and highlight what, based on your prior testimony, where you come out now.
We discussed some of these aspects after Ms. McGurk provided testimony. Just to be clear, it's one use variance and two bulk variances. I think she may have mistakenly mentioned three bulk variants. It's just the buffer variance and the accessory dwelling height. There's an analysis or suggestion that a 70-foot wide property would be more appropriate for what's being proposed. I think that's in stark contrast for what the city allows throughout all residential housing on 25-foot wide lots with the appropriate density standard of 42 units per acre, and that's what's being proposed tonight. She discussed setbacks where what's being proposed is not sufficient and what would be a 4-foot setback would be more comfortable. And I think that theme of what an adjacent property owner would be more comfortable is common, and it is difficult to contemplate a vacant property being developed. Obviously, these are plans being reviewed, but zoning is not a standard of complying with the wishes of adjacent properties. Zoning is a standard of establishing an appropriate set of standards and applying them to properties. We have a unique condition here where we have a property that is not appropriately sized for the uses in the zone in which it's in. And as a licensed planner, with this board, we're presenting an appropriate application of appropriate standards. That's what we were representing with the R1 comparisons. There's a statement that there's no deficit of housing in the city. I would rebuke that. In a week, I'm providing a vacant land and land bank presentation at the American Planning Conference because we have a housing crisis. We have a housing shortage. We need more housing, and we need a more affordable housing. But you're aimed at a 4-unit, appropriately sized infill residential application that creates housing on a small, appropriate scale. There's no deficit analysis that needs to be made, just to clarify that. She mentioned issued variances with this board and the planning board that get reviewed on an annual basis. There's no test for that. There's no measure or reference to prior applications being made. This is a unique circumstance. I don't think I've ever encountered a circumstance just like this. So I can tell you it is not a precedent. I can't tell you that I'm wrong and there won't be something very, very similar, but this is a very unique circumstance. So I don't think any action by this board will create a precedent, and I don't think any prior granting of variances should weigh in on this application. With respect to densities, all of these properties on Glenwood on the north side are residential uses. They're not dormitories. The St. Peter's had sold them. They become apartments because they're no longer strictly housing for students. And with respect to the larger former dormitory and apartment buildings, which are all now apartment buildings, you have a range of densities of 75 units per acre up to 215 units per acre. Again, these are the adjacent properties east and west. We are not proposing at that scale. The adjacent properties have a range between 12 and 48 units per acre. The most recent being the 4-unit at the planning board approved at 48 units per acre. What we clarified earlier with respect to the accessory dwelling unit not being calculated into the density. So what's being technically proposed is 36 units per acre as being conservative, including it. Even including it, we're at that 42 unit per acre standard. Those were my speaking points. I really do hope that helped clarify our perspective on some of the testimony that was provided. And
thanks, Charles. And just lastly, prior to 2000, I believe it was 2000 when this was rezoned because St. Peter's had purchased the property sometime around there. Are you aware of what the zoning was prior to it being zoned university?
I can't confirm. My assumption would be the R1, but I can't confirm.
The R1 didn't exist. Was it a residential zoning prior to it being university zoning?
That's what my assumption was. I can't confirm, but.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we're just going to change it up a little bit, and I'm going to have the commissioners make comments if they have any or ask questions before I turn it over to the public to come forward. Councilwoman, I'm sorry, you're just going to have to wait a few more minutes, okay? Okay. And public as well. So does anybody have questions? Because I have questions and.
Oh, okay, I'll go.
Yep.
So, this question would be for the architect. The ADA unit in the back, it's 2 levels. I didn't see how, if someone is in a wheelchair, would get to the 2nd floor.
Correct, but that's not regulated by. It doesn't have to be ADA compliant.
Oh, so it's just
It's an ADU.
ADU, but
So it's just a-
Sorry,
it was just an ADU, not an ADA.
that is correct.
Okay, so
It's an accessory dwelling unit.
okay. And the second question would be for the owner of 130. You don't have to get up. Does your house have a basement?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
A not livable basement.
but it is a below grade basement.
Yes, it is.
Okay, that was my 2.
Peter?
This is for the architect. I was curious that with your design on the front facade, what was your consideration of trying to match the Elizabethan motive on the other houses versus the more modern appearance that yours has?
I mean, the building facade still carries a lot of traditional material you see on those buildings. The hexagonal bay, the pitch roof, all those elements are carried from the adjacent properties. I mean, it's not literally matching those those elements in terms of detailing, but they are considered traditional elements.
It seems that it's much more modern than traditional.
Modern in terms of what?
It's much more angular than curves, for example, which is more typical of some of the porches and some of the structure of some of the adjacent properties.
Correct. I mean
And by the way, also that yours is much more. It's more 2-dimensional versus 3-dimensional of the adjacent properties.
Understood. So there are zone regulations, right? As part of the R1 district, and there are required offsets from the corners, and there are a lot of parameters which goes into the design of the facade. Some of the elements, you can see in the adjacent building where the box bays were always towards the edge of the building, that is not permitted anymore. You have to have a certain setback. It can't be on the corner. You have to have like 16 inches a setback from the corner. So again, we are looking at the literal representation of what the adjacent building is versus what this building is. But, we have to conform with all those requirements and then design it. Yeah, some of the elements may not be that, steep or sharp or angular, but that's because, there are a lot of other factors we have to consider as part of the ordinance and comply with it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I have some questions. First, I have to say that I don't think you convinced me that this is a hardship that a building has to be this size and then an additional building behind it. I don't see the hardship in building something that fits in the neighborhood and is not that many stories, that many bedrooms, etc. That's the first. And I believe what Commissioner Barron was talking about is that it doesn't fit in with the Queen Anne or the Victorian style. There is no porch on this property. If I look across at all of this, there's not even a porch on that piece of property. I'm looking at the pictures, and this is a massive unit that has gone up. And I know they got the approval from the planning board, but I would never want to see another building that size going right up between those other buildings there. So, I mean, I don't think it's consistent within the neighborhood nor in the height with everything else that's there. So those are my questions, my comments. My question is, Mr. Height, you said that we have a deficit, we don't have enough housing, and then you said something about affordable housing. This building absolutely is not affordable housing, so I may have misunderstood. You don't have to comment. I'm not asking that question. And I do have one question though. How many meetings were there with the community, and that you tried to address their concerns, or develop something that fits within that piece of property?
Sure. So these meetings date back to, at this point, a couple of years ago already. There were, I believe, 2 meetings that we held with the community, each 2 or 3, and then there was an email correspondence requesting changes which were made and subsequently presented. What we didn't present to you tonight, nor would we because it's not the application before you, were the 5 different iterations of plans that had been shown in person at community meetings and through email to the community, trying and seeking to reflect on the changes that were requested.
I guess I would just like to know how much conversation took place between the people in the community and the developer.
Yeah, correct.
So if you have something like that the next time, maybe you need to bring that. But also, it's can the architectural design somehow be altered that it fits within what's existing on that neighborhood?
The design,
Those houses, the Victorian style of the Queen
Fair
Anne style.
question. I guess our
So again, as you mentioned about the front porch and some of the elements like that, if we comply with something like that, that's going to trigger additional variances. So again, we were trying to minimize the variances and try to conform with the R1 zone regulations, and that's why we adopted this design. I mean, typical R1 standard, district standard, it doesn't allow the front step to come out more than 4 feet from the main facade. In order for us to create a porch and pull the steps out, that would trigger a variance. So again, as I said, there were other factors we considered, and that's when this was conceived.
Okay, so I'm just questioning as to why you can't build a structure that doesn't need a variance to bring a porch out. Like, this structure is really, maybe you don't have to have the piece in the back and the building can go back. But those are just my concerns that I'm expressing
Understood.
tonight. Okay?
Thank you.
Does anybody at the commission have any questions? Okay, if not, then we'll proceed to have public comments.
Sure.
Okay. If anyone from the public would like to make any comments, ask any questions, I ask that you please come forward at this time. And I believe that the council person wanted some other folks to come forward first.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And just state and spell your name for the record.
That would be Corey, Cory, last name Garriga. All right. I'm here tonight to represent Commissioner Bill O'Day. What's being proposed here is nearly identical to what this board already denied last year on another project. What a similar board denied last year on another project. This same oversized footprint, same height variance, same disregard for the historic context. This design doesn't fit. It's wedged between 2 small homes and asking for setbacks and variances that just don't line up with the block. This is not theoretical harm. The proposal would introduce new shadows, reduce light and air, damage canopies, tree canopies, and root systems, and erode the privacy of residents on either side. It compounds density in a neighborhood already burdened by overdevelopment and offers no public value in return. There are real impacts here: loss of light, air, open space, and tree canopy and privacy, which I just mentioned. The row of historic homes would take a hit, not just visually, but culturally. These houses carry weight. This block was home to civil rights leaders, social workers, people who shaped the city. That deserves more than just lip service. Glenwood is listed in the historic preservation element of the city's master plan. These are not just old houses, they are cultural landmarks. Home of figures like Ella Barksdale, Brown, and India Edwards speak to a legacy worth protecting. Not with just plaques, but serious planning decisions. Over the last 2 years, neighbors have endured nonstop disruption, noise, dust, construction, and dislocation. we're not here to block responsible development. Other builders have collaborated with the community and produced better outcomes. That standard can and should be upheld. This property is not within a Jersey City redevelopment zone, and granting that status would weaken upholding that law. The zoning code was designed to prevent this exact kind of overbuilding. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. A reminder to the speakers that you have 3 minutes and we'll be timed.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And spell and state your full name and address.
Michael Manzo, Manzo, 82 Wright Avenue, lifelong Jersey City resident. I just want to start off by saying thank you, commissioners, for hearing me. Mr. Wine, Mr. Height, I think fantastic people here, and I won't make any disparaging remarks as to the developer, I promise you. Let me talk about Nathan and Sharon. Genuine people, you'd love to have them as neighbors. Spearhead a lot of efforts around Christmas time, helping the community, cleanups, introducing people to new businesses. Is that all right?
Well, it's the fly.
The
fly is
gigantic fly.
Yeah, right.
Really
It was
community.
up here. I sent it down there.
Spearheaded
Oh,
a
there
lot
it
of
is.
efforts around Christmas time.
Christmas
helping
time,
the community.
opening new businesses in Bergen Avenue, introducing people just to get them going. Really, ideally, they're true people that have the heart in Jersey City, and they came to Jersey City with a dream, and they have a home that was what they wanted. And I don't think that no matter what they put next door and tweak it this way, tweak it this way, they should have the power of the board to have something that's even more detrimental to what they have now. I think something can fit here without any variances. This is not that, and I think this should be denied. Thank you.
Raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Full name, spell it, and
Sondra, Sondra, Edwards, Beasing, Buesing,
I'm sorry, what was that?
Buesing, Riley, Riley. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my concerns, commissioners. I am a lifelong resident of Jersey City, a former social worker, current experiential learning educator at St. Peter's University. My family has lived at 122 Glenwood Avenue since 1957. I and my husband since 1990. I'm here tonight as a neighbor and friend of Sharon and Nathan McCormick, and as an executive board member of the McGinley Square Community Board. My purpose is to voice my objections to the developer's proposal for 128 Glenwood and to articulate the negative impact it will undoubtedly have upon our community. I say undoubtedly because I, my family, and neighbors have lived through this developer's similar project at 124 Glenwood, having met with his lawyers, architects, and planners, having addressed the planning and zoning boards, and having ultimately lost. Having done all of this, we are now experiencing, my family, the effects of what we feared, a completely out-of-scale multi-level residence which is just too large, which is out of compliance with the developer's renderings. In the front of our house, our view is now obscured. We can no longer see the sky. We can't see our neighbors' porches. Instead, we see an outsized concrete wall attached to an outsized house, which blocks the sun and the sky and casts us in too much shade. I invite each of you to visit us and gaze at the eyesore next door. Walk in our shoes. Then you'll be able to see and better understand what this developer has done to our neighborhood. The structure at 124 has had a deleterious impact on our quality of life, diminishing light and open space, creating shadow and increasing density. It has ruined the charm and character of our historic string of Queen Anne-style homes. The projected structure at 128 will do the same, precisely because of our lived experience with this developer. We cannot believe that the proposed project will materialize as planned. Thank you.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And state and spell your full name and address.
My name is George E. Riley Jr. That's George Riley Jr., also known as MG. You have, I think, Exhibit 2. I'd like to give something to you all. And I think also, Commissioner, you said that we could ask questions of the developer. Okay. They had a rendering. I'd like to have that rendering of the streetscape, just so you can compare the streetscape to what you actually have in front of you.
Yeah, can we put that rendering up, please? Do you want to mark these?
I guess it's another O.
Is it?
Yeah. 03?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Is that sufficient? Okay. So you see, well, it was there. 124, you see that they're rendering, and they swore that it was accurate. If you look at the accuracy of this drawing versus what you see in the two pictures, the front picture is from October of last year, October 8th of 2024, and the picture on the back is from April 23rd of this year. And you can see that that by no means is represented what's actually here. And they swore that that was correct. And my wife alluded to the fact that we've had to endure all of the noise and everything. And as I would expect a good neighbor or a good developer, if they're trying to do well within our neighborhood, that they would clean up after themselves. We've had siding fly all over our property. Be it this aluminum siding, the flashing, plastic, we've had nails. Nobody's ever come across to see if they can clean up anything. And you can see due to the size and scale of this, we were actually told that all of the houses, including this new 124, all the porches would be the same. We cannot see our neighbors, as my wife said. This doesn't represent that at all. And we are very fearful that what they've done at 124, they are going to try and do again at 128. Okay, and at 128, you know, even though they say it's a smaller scale, they told us that this 124 would just be about a foot or so taller than us. It is nowhere near a foot. There, I think the fourth floor that you're looking at, the windows there are looking down into our third floor like this. You know, I mean, everything from this thing is horrendous, and we fear that 128 will be the same, and we do not want our neighbors to have to experience the same thing. And there was one last thing. They talked about the side wall, you know, with the windows. You know, they ran into the same thing at 124. The windows were supposed to be on the other side, and there's somehow, I think they said up to fire code or something, they had to move the windows from the other side over to our side. I would have preferred a blank wall rather than have to worry about people looking into my house, you know, but now, you know, we just have to deal with that. And the rooftops, too much noise, and I think you should deny 128 for all of those reasons above. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more? Two more.
Yeah.
Well, this is taking us to 10 o'clock.
Huh?
This takes us to 10 o'clock. Right?
I think I'm going to go for it.
Hi.
Do you swear or
You can't
affirm
have
the
an open
testimony you're
comment.
about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Full name, spell it.
Robert Fu, Robert, last name Fu,
Address.
414 Fairmount Avenue, Yeah, so I'd like to say I do share the objections of, my fellow neighborhood residents over to this project as it stands now. I fully recognize the need to develop more housing in Jersey City, but I feel this project is very overscaled, and a 2D elevation really does not do justice to the actual experience. Basing my objection on the actual experience of 124 Glenwood. When you walk down the street or even view in Google Street View, it's immediately very jarring. It really does not, it jumps right out. It does not, it's very dwarfing to the other, the existing residences. And I feel that 128 will be the same way. In addition, harmonizing with the local context is more than borrowing design elements from the neighboring buildings, but it's also a matter of massing and articulation. And lastly, as someone who is very interested in trees and their role in mitigating stormwater, what occurs to me is this project builds out the entire lot. It basically covers, aside from the small space between it and the accessory dwelling, everything is built out. There is no permeability left, to absorb stormwaters. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Your full name and spelling.
Yep, it's Mira, M-I-R-A. Last name is P-R-I-N-Z hyphen A-R-E-Y, Prinzeri. Good evening, Commissioners. It's good to see you all this evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here in support of the residents of Glenwood and the McGinley Square Community Board in their concerns about this project. I think that when you are considering the master plan that we have for the city and also the historic element to that, homes on this block were added to that list specifically so they would have some sort of significance and eventual protection moving forward. And the fact that that's not quite there in place yet is not necessarily their fault or the developer's fault, but it's something that should be considered. I think also when it comes to the master plan, there are design elements and design standards, and this building does not necessarily meet that as it relates to the porches and some of the exterior elements of the building. For the issue with the accessory dwelling units, I believe that those are good things for the city. I voted on legislation that the planning division had put forward to approve them. However, I think sometimes when I hear that we're going to put in an ADU and then we're going to do a roof deck to make up for green space, I feel like that's not necessarily the right trade-off, nor was it necessarily the intention. ADUs have a place in the built environment in Jersey City. I'm just not sure that this is necessarily the appropriate application of that. So I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Hi, Pam.
Swear
Yeah.
or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Your full name, spell it, and address.
My full name is Pam Andes, 191 Van Horn Street, and I'm here on behalf of Councilman Rich Bogiano.
And could you spell your last name?
Andes, A-N-D-E-S.
Thank you.
Like the candies. Thank you, honorable board members. On behalf of Councilman Rich Bogiano, he apologizes that he can't be here, but he is at another meeting. He wanted me to read his statement. First of all, everyone should respect each other and work together. The property owner, the community, and the city. My office and I were not aware of this recent application until yesterday. There was not a meeting about this application that I'm aware of. Historic homes and historic design are the treasures of a community.
The community benefits from their beauty and their history. This design does not complement the historic beauty of Glenwood Avenue. It's too narrow for a four-family. Community benefits from history and historic, oh, I said that. A community benefits from the public view of an architectural series, so height is important. It's a shame that historic preservation for this area came after the 124 Glenwood Avenue demolition. Does this benefit the community? No. Commissioners, please vote no, but encourage everyone to work together. And then if I could say my own note, I live in a two-family, new construction of a Bayonne box, a 25 by 100 lot. I have a covered porch across the entire front of the house. There is a row of arches under the roof to mimic a traditional arcade. It looks exactly like the rows of houses across the street that have been there for over 50 years. And if you've been to Metuchen, they do a great job imitating the historic homes that are in that area. So last note, a new construction on Torres has caused flooding to both neighbors on both sides, so the setbacks on each side matters. So thank you so much.
Charlene, raise your right hand to be sworn.
Good evening.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And your full name and spell it and address.
Charlene Burke, CharleneBurke, 56 Duncan Avenue. Good evening, Commissioners. I am also the president of the West Side Community Alliance, of which this area is included on the west side. So firstly, I would like to compliment the neighbors of Glenwood Avenue having to educate themselves and attend an unprecedented amount of developer meetings and land use hearings because a large percentage of the block was sold in one fell swoop by St. Peter's University. The institution unexpectedly divested itself of properties it long ago had rezoned for university purposes. This is one of those properties amid a cluster of unique family homes that have stood for more than a century, until 124 was demolished and an infill out of sync and context was inserted. I am here today to ask that you carefully listen and consider the comments of these recent and longtime residents who are already the shareholders in this neighborhood. Since last year, when revising the master plan land use and the historic preservation element, the city has come to recognize these homes, along with other buildings on Glenwood, including the former dormitories that house St. Peter's students, as historic resources in the Appendix A of the historic preservation plan element. That when qualified by further investigation may be eligible for listing individually or as a district. Recognizing that a development project may be approved at some point for this site, I would like to say that given the amount of variances requested, the neighborhood is relying on all of you this evening to instruct the applicant to make changes that will make any project put forward become a well-suited infill project that respects the properties surrounding it. Side yards and setbacks are critical to the visual and physical impact in the remaining row that has stood for so long. Light, air, and open spaces are elements that are common characteristics of these private homes that should be incorporated here. The project has diminished these features to their very minimums, which is a detriment to the neighboring properties as well as the block as a whole. Even the addition of an ADU is uncharacteristic in this neighborhood and would have a negative impact, contributing to the stormwater runoff. Please keep in mind it is a sloped area to neighboring properties by the removal of several mature trees that are older than even Mr. Wine. So perhaps I might persuade you tonight to look more closely at this project to ensure it complements the existing structures on either side in terms of scale and massing. align with the front setback and side yard clearances, and visually I'm the community leader on the west side. Could I have just finished? It's just another sentence or two.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Please, thank you. And visually harmonize with the row in context and materials, or send them back to the drawing board for a better fit. This neighborhood deserves nothing less than an infill addition that brings added visual value to the block, and just not an added value to a bank account. These are your neighbors, and they are depending on your wise decision to improve their neighborhood by sending this back for the revisions that are needed to be a complement and not an eyesore. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? No. Okay, so why don't we close the public?
That closes the public portion of the meeting.
So, Mr. Wine, before you get up and say anything, let me tell you this.
Yeah.
We have to leave the building at 10 because of security reasons, and it's now 10. So, we still have comments from staff, so we're going to have to come back another day.
Sure.
So that other day, though, however, cannot be July because of our calendar. So it's
Yeah,
gotta be
July
August.
10th it's going to be too full. So realistically, August 7th is going to have to be the date.
Could I make a request? And feel free to say no, but I know I've done this before with the city. I just want to make sure the dates. Would you be comfortable, because things sometimes do drop off, carrying and placing us last on the agenda on July 10th, and to the extent that it's either a full board or we look at it and it's not going to happen, we would adjourn further to August 7th. I just don't want to miss the opportunity if everything else on your agenda drops off.
Let's see what he says.
Well,
Well,
we can carry it to July 10th. Is that what you want?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
And then, if everybody will come back and we'll see what's happening on July 10th.
Okay.
But you'll be last.
Yeah.
Okay, and just before we do that, if it's okay, if I can make a quick statement just in response to public real quick. So I'm glad Ms. Burke spoke last because I always appreciate engaging with her, and I think that she had some very good points. I want it to be clear for the board, and this is by no means, my closing statement or any indication that we're not going to take another look at things, but I think that I'd be remiss if I didn't say that we tried that route, and having met with the community over the course of time, it turned into a negotiation against ourselves. As I indicated to the chair before, 5 different iterations of the plans making those changes that kept resulting in, well, we're requesting something else and we're requesting something else until it became negotiation against ourselves, which culminated a couple of weeks ago at this point with, an application to divest my client of his own property and convert it into green space. So I need that to be clear. As Ms. Burke said, I'm always happy to work with the community. I don't take that lightly, but I think if I didn't put that on the record, it would give the board the wrong impression that was not part of this process.
Okay.
Okay.
So hopefully that you have open dialogue again and take into consideration some of the comments from the board members and the
Absolutely.
public before you come back here with looking for a vote from us.
Absolutely, and I appreciate your time this evening, and with that, I'd respectfully request that we be carried with no further notice to
Right.
the July 10th meeting date.
Right. Cynthia, did you want to say something? Because you're going to jump up there. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
I'd like to just address one comment about this. I don't think it's been really clear, but the grant application that was submitted to the County Open Space Trust is what everybody's sort of talking about. And the intention was to assemble funding to present an offer to Mr. Wine's client, who has given us a price tag for what he's willing to accept. So there was no intention to take anything away from anybody, and I think Mr. Wine's fully aware of that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay,
so-
I think we're going to adjourn this meeting, okay?
Yes.
All right, so
So
can I
before we
get,
leave, though, we do-
before we leave, okay.
We have some resolutions. to-
Yes.
Oh, do you need to make a motion to adjourn, or?
I'm making it,
We're adjourning your case. but
We're
not
adjourning your-
adjourning
No,
the
to
meeting.
adjourn our case, I just want
Yes.
to.
We've
Yes.
pushed it off to July 10th.
10th.
Your last on the calendar, your notices are preserved.
Perfect, thank
I
you.
have to bring a
Thank
bottle
you.
of water with me, I
I
swear.
always do. Okay, so with that portion done, do we have any,
No, that's, no, yes, I'm good. Okay, ready?
do we have,
I hear that right here.
do you have some resolutions to
Yes, we do. I do.
memorialize? Okay.
Okay. So the first case is Z19-058. The applicant was 428 Realty LLC. The address was 482 Mercer
The
Street.
address was, I can't hear you, Ben.
I'm sorry. The address was 482 Mercer Street. And that application was heard and decided on February 6, 2020. Imagine that. And here we are today. And so on February 6, 2020, the chairman was Josh Jacobs. The vice chair was Kate Donnelly.
Oh, my God.
The commissioners were, God rest his soul, Richard McCormick, Ahmad Shadid, still with us, Chet Rothman, who moved down south, Lucas Netchert, married with a kid, look at that, and Matthew Villardo. Matty Villardo, jeez. Anyway, that was an application for a preliminary and final major site plan approval with C and D variances, and that was approved, 7 in favor, none opposed. All in favor of memorializing that is?
Aye.
Aye.
And the next application was heard when?
5 years ago.
Next application was heard April 10th of this year, moving forward, right? And present that evening were Chair Coyle, Vice Chair Arroyo, then Commissioners Shadid, Allen, Burns, Barron, and Patel. And that case was Z 2024-0066. The applicant was Dwight 16 LLC. That was a C variance for front yard stair encroachment, if you remember that case. In that case, there was a motion to approve that application, but it failed. 0 in favor, 7 opposed. That was the front yard steps that, all in favor of memorializing that?
Aye.
Aye.
And the next case was heard April 10th, 2025. That case was Z 2025-0022. The applicant was Joseph Linz. The address was 285 and a half 3rd Street. And it was an extension. And that was heard, present on April 10th was Chair Coyle, Vice Chair Arroyo, Commissioners Allen, Patel, Barron, Burns, and Boyle. That passed 6 in favor, none opposed. All in favor of memorializing that?
Aye.
Aye. And next one is April 24th. And that case was Z 2024-0056. The applicants were Tejal Shah, Kanan Shah, and Avani Patel. The address was 157 Lincoln. Present on April 25th were Acting Chair Arroyo, Commissioners Allen, Patel, Barron, Shadid, and Boyle. And that was an application for a C variance, which was approved C, 6 in favor, none opposed. All in favor of memorializing that?
Aye.
Aye.
And the last one was heard, the last resolution, rather, to memorialize was on May 1st, 2025, Z19-012. It was that Jones Hall Associates for 591 Montgomery Street. It was the application for a minor subdivision with C variances and the preliminary and final major site plan approval with C and D variances. Present on May 1st was, well, first, let's go with this. The first board decision was on the minor subdivision. And the commissioners present were Chair Coyle, Commissioners Patel, Barron, Burns, Boyle, and Zablicki. That passed 6 in favor, none opposed. All in favor of approving that is?
Aye.
Aye.
And then the second phase of that case was the preliminary and major site plan approval with C and D variances, and that was approved 5 in favor, 1 opposed. The 1 opposed was the chairwoman, and the other 5 I just mentioned. So that passed 5 in favor, 1 opposed. All in favor of memorializing that?
Aye.
And that ends it for the resolution. So if we can have a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Is
I
there
motion,
something to
I
say?
motion to adjourn the meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.